It's 12 p.m. 2017. Thank you for everyone coming out to be with us. We're going to start our meeting as usual with our opening ceremony. Please join Mrs. Sullins in leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Now, if you would please silence any cell phones and electronic devices so that we're avoiding disruptions to anybody around us. And also, if you could join me in a moment of silence, please. Thank you very much. All right. We're going to make a little bit of a change on our agenda. We're going to have the Citizens Bond Oversight Committee presentation moved down past appointments so that we can work on our next item of presentation, which is the recognition of outgoing trustee Jamie Sullins. So, it's customary at this point for us to talk, as we don't usually do, about ourselves up here. And this is a wonderful opportunity to be able to take a moment to say thank you, Jamie, honor you, your service, your dedication. I'll reserve some extra words for the end. But first, maybe we can have some other trustees share some words. I love the flowers there. We're sure going to miss you. Aren't they? Aren't they?
My favorite color is yellow, so.
Oh, very good. Yellow Rose of Texas. Very good. So, Miss Mays.
President Reich, if I could, I thought if there's any watershed, the first one is going to be the person who volunteers to drive my cats to Austin, Texas. So I just would like to make sure that, Spence, if you could keep an eye on who it is, so I have a volunteer to drive the cats to Austin. Thank you.
Oh.
Mr.
Well,
Hogg, I'm watching you.
She might be on her way out. Might be on her way out, but she tossed the gauntlet down. All right.
Thank you, Ms. Sullins. Thank you, President Reich. It is my honor to be able to have the privilege to read a resolution from the State of Texas House Representative Chris Turner for Jamie Sullins. Whereas Jamie Sullins is concluding her distinguished tenure on the board of Arlington Independent School District in 2017, and whereas first elected in 2010, Ms. Sullins most recently served as president of the board, which was named both the 2014 Outstanding School Board of Texas by the Texas Association of School Administrators and the 2015 Outstanding School Board by the HEB Excellence in Education Awards program. The board developed a clear vision for the district in its rigorous strategic planning process, an approach that has enabled strong governance through transformation while fostering a culture of respect and transparency. Whereas from 2015 to 2017, Ms. Sullins also served on the board of the Council of the Great City Schools. She is the founder and former president of the North Arlington Education Alliance, which works closely with the district to promote academic excellence. In addition, she has given generously of her time and expertise as a member of the advisory boards of the Salvation Army of Arlington, Junior League of Arlington, and Arlington Chamber of Commerce. Whereas Ms. Sullins has brought to her role on the school board extensive experience in the realm of finance. She was employed at Interturbine Group of Companies as Manager of Financial Planning and Analysis in its global operations, and she also worked for Lockheed Martin Missiles and Advanced Programs. A graduate of Texas Tech University, she holds a bachelor's degree of Business Administration in Finance. In all of her endeavors, she is supported by the love and encouragement of her husband, Gerald, They are the proud parents of 2 AISD graduates, Ryan and Amanda. And whereas, through her leadership and deep commitment to public education, Jamie Sullins has greatly benefited the community, and she may reflect with pride on her contributions to the local school system. Now therefore be it resolved that the House of Representatives of the 85th Texas Legislature, first called session, hereby honor Jamie Sullins for her service on the board of the Arlington Independent School District and extend to her sincere best wishes for the future. And be it further resolved that an official copy of this resolution be prepared for Ms. Sullins as an expression of high regard by the Texas House of Representatives. And it is signed. And this resolution has also been signed by all of the representatives in the House. And there's also a flag that was flown over the Capitol that will be shared with you as well. Thank you, Jamie.
And Ms. Sullins, Representative Turner's office, they were not able to be here, which is why Ms. Mays read that resolution in. Otherwise, they would absolutely be here. They just weren't able to. So,
Tremendous, huge thanks to Representative for the work that he does day in, day out for public education, a true champion for the work that we do. And I'm humbled and surprised and grateful. Thank you.
other trustees interested in saying some words? Mr. Hogg.
Thank you, President Reich. Ms. Sullins, I know you don't like nights like tonight when we get to talk about you. I know when you were having to make this decision, you said, just please don't spend too long talking about me. Well, you're gonna have to get over it because we're gonna talk about you for a little bit, but we will expedite. Ms. Sullins, I've had the honor of serving with you for 7 years, your entire time. Talked about when you were stepping down as our president, and I still remember that conversation at Panera with you, and I said, when are you running for school board? He said, well, I'm thinking about it. You've been a dedicated servant to this district way beyond your time as a trustee. You've served this district from every single role, every nitty-gritty job in the PTA to booster clubs, the principals calling you late at night, serving all your children's schools. You've done it all. And then you've stepped up, helped North Arlington, former group, and then served this district as a trustee for the last 7 years. I joked with you many a times when you were a trustee that I was going to make an award, and it was going to be the Toy Award, and it was the Trustee of the Year. And I think you would have won it almost every year. And we joked about it many times as a board because we become a very, let's say, dysfunctional family, but very functional on the same side. But we do become a family, and you served amazing. And you're probably, anyone asks, I said, you're probably one of the most dedicated, hardest working trustees I've ever worked with. And I see it around the state. As someone who's been on this board for 9 years, serves on TASB, I get to see other trustees. And your reputation's not just in Arlington, but around the states, and the connections you've made and what you've done. You helped us go through some tough times of a transition of a superintendent, and drive the process to hire what I believe is the best superintendent in the country for us. You helped us reach the goal of a new strategic plan and become as we talked about, a very proactive district instead of a reactive district. And your hand's all over that. You've changed this district. It's Board 1 Board of the Year, mainly because of your efforts, of what we've done. You've changed the district. Constantly you get up here, and as elected officials, right when we become elected officials, you become a little ADD no matter what. But you always kept everyone on what's the focus on student achievement. How are we talking about student achievement and what's happening with our students? It's made me a better trustee by serving with you. You've always had dedication to students. You've always had determination. My mother had the honor of knowing you before I got to know you. She taught at least one, I think both of your children, at Shack. And my mother kept saying, oh my God, she has the best kids. And beyond your time as a trustee, as I've gotten to know your two children, I haven't gotten to know the new about-to-be daughter-in-law yet, and your husband. I see what amazing children you've raised. And it just proves all that work you've done as a parent has paid off. All the work you've done as a trustee has paid off to all the thousands and thousands of children that you've impacted, that you've made an impact on. I'm a better trustee for serving with you. You've made all of us better. You've made the entire district better. We're forever in your debt. I can't thank you enough for your service, but more importantly, for your friendship and making it really enjoyable at one of the most difficult jobs anyone could have as a trustee. And you did it with class and grace. I couldn't ask for anything better. I'm so proud to call you a friend, and I'm proud to have a place to stay when I go to Austin now to visit you. Thank you, Ms. Sullins. You're the best.
Thank you, Mr. Hogg. Other trustees wanting to say a few words?
I think my lights, oh, I'm sorry. Wrong button.
Ms. Walton, go right ahead.
I'm sorry. Oh, my gosh. I don't know what I would have done without you. The first instant that I arrived 2 years ago in this position, you were a terrific mentor, and I learned pretty quickly that you doing the job as president, they say about the President of the United States that that job doesn't change the person, it just makes them who they really are, comes forward. And that was so true of you for the 2 years you served as president, which were my first 2 years on the board. You're the real McCoy, a leader who works diligently for our community and our schools and our kids. And like Bowie said, I'm proud to know you, and I'm proud to have served with you for at least 2 years, and I've learned so much from you, and thank you. Thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Walton. Any other trustees? Ms. Hudson, go right ahead.
I can't say anything better than what my colleagues, Mr. Hogg and Ms. Walton, have said. But Jamie, just on a personal level, it has been very inspiring and educational to see your leadership in action. The level of preparation that you bring to every interaction with every person, and particularly every meeting, and the level of focus that you have brought always on our students. You set a high bar, and like Bowie said, you have made me a better trustee just by looking up to your example. So I can't tell you how much I've appreciated working with you and learning from you. I just like the words, I wish I was a poet, but thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Hudson. This is not open only to trustees. We do have a superintendent up here as part of our team, and I think he'd like to say something.
Yeah. So Jamie, thank you for your service to our students primarily. I've had the privilege of serving now for 5 years, and it's certainly an honor, and it is because you have done so much for this district. Bowie said it just right. Your impact on all that we've done is evident, and I've told you this, and we've had a lot of discussion privately. So, but you are an exceptional person, first and foremost, and you brought that as a leader, and you've had that impact on our district. And I look around our district and the things that we've been able to accomplish thus far, and Jamie, your leadership is so evident on all those things. And as the young people from Arlington and the students go through our system, they're blessed that you have served as a board member, and your impact for generations to come will be felt. And you should have some, as I said in convocation and everywhere I go, you should have some joy in that, because you had a rare opportunity to impact thousands of lives, their families, the community, and generations to come. And to your family, thank you for allowing us to have Jamie and serving for so many hours. I know that's not easy, but I really appreciate it, and our district appreciates it, our students appreciate it. And on a personal level, Jamie, and I've told you this before, you have helped me grow as a leader, and you have your coaching, your advice has been just exceptional, and I appreciate it. I'm going to miss it, but I know where you're going to go, and I know how to contact you, and so I wish you the very best, and many blessings to you and on behalf of our students and our staffs. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Cavazos. Jamie, first off, it seems apparent that you might have tossed that gauntlet down and you're going to be driving your cats down to Austin. You're getting real close. I said several words after your recent presidency. I'm somewhat speechless. Bowie has hit everything on the mark. Dr. Cavazos, great complimentary words. For me personally, you are so dedicated to the advancement of our students and the potential that they are not even realizing that they can achieve. You're always pushing that envelope. When I first started as a trustee, there was so much work, so much research that I felt I had to do constantly to challenge myself, to challenge the board and the district. And when you came on a year later, you made me feel like I could take a vacation. You did so, and not that I did, but you did. Better be careful how I word this. The amount of research and work that you put into it is just phenomenal. Always, in my opinion, the voice of reason, always looking at the forest for the trees, which I believe is the #1 job of any trustee. Catching the nuances that might be a distraction from that forest for the trees, always with the eye on that ball of what's best for the kids. You came up through the ranks, I guess you could say, in North Arlington, and you became the force of North Arlington. And not everybody necessarily knows this, but in order for me, when I first ran, I had to go through Ms. Sullins and her crew to make sure that, yeah, maybe he's somebody we could support. That being said, it's just an example of you started with amazing children as a passionate, dedicated parent wanting to do the best for them, and it has overtaken you and blossomed into something, as Dr. Cavazos said, impacts literally generations to come. The face of Arlington, of what it is now, what it is becoming for decades after we're gone, is the legacy that you have helped build. Thank you, thank you. Your leadership has been great. Your constant devotion, your always there for anybody. And that is remarkable to me. No matter how anybody would view any certain position or issue, you're there. You're there talking with them, having a meeting with them, having coffee, lunch, whatever it is. You're out there all the time to not only do the job that we have as trustees in making sure we have our eye on the pulse of the community, but it was for you a true care to hear what they have to say and take that into the mix of your thought process in development for our students. And that inspires me to be even better to that call of service that we all have here as trustees. I think you exemplify to the nth degree. And I'm absolutely going to miss your eloquence of words and your thought process here on this dais. And I know, as you've said, you're not going far as away from education, advocacy, and we look forward to crossing paths for sure. And yes, having a place to stay in Austin sounds pretty good too. So thank you. I'm gonna miss you, Jamie. Mr. Hibbs?
Miss Sullins. I'm going to start with a proclamation from the city of Arlington and from our friend Mayor Williams. He wished that he could be here, and it's killing him for not being here. But he did ask that we read this in honor of you. Official proclamation from the office of the mayor, Arlington, Texas. Whereas Jamie Sullins has served on the Arlington Independent School District Board since May 2010, most recently serving as president of the board, and whereas while on the board, AISD board, it was named the 2014 Outstanding School Board of Texas by the Texas Association of School Administrators, and 2015 Outstanding School Board in the HEB Excellence in Education Awards program. And whereas Jamie is the founder and president of the North Arlington Education Alliance and serves on the advisory boards of the Salvation Army of Arlington, the Junior League of Arlington, and the Arlington Chamber of Commerce. And whereas Jamie has had a positive impact on the community as a leader and champion for both education and the city of Arlington, and whereas the impact of Jamie Sullins' legacy will continue to be an incredible asset to the Arlington Independent School District and the entire community for generations to come. Now, therefore, I, W. Jeff Williams, Mayor of the City of Arlington, of Texas, and on behalf of the Arlington City Council, do hereby proclaim August 17, 2017 as Jamie Sullins Day. That is a proclamation. I love that last part, whereas it said that, not the part that it's Jamie Sullins Day, because
Every day is Jamie.
yeah, everybody celebrates that. And I do know that you have a problem with the inflation of the helium here, so I'm just going to go on and be. The one thing that Mayor Williams got really right in there is that the Arlington Independent School District has an everlasting impact by your service here. Ms. Sullins and I were always in the same election years together, and we always had a little bit of a competition with this. The first time we both were up to run, I went unopposed, and Jamie had two other opponents. The next year, we both had opponents, and then the last time she went unopposed, and I had an opponent. And so we both figured, okay, one time we got 100% of the vote, and the other time we're checking to see who edged the other one out with the highest percentage. And whereas we did that in all fun, we were able to serve for 6 different elections that I'm aware of, 3 of our own and 3 bonds. Ms. Sullins and I were able to start, and I think when we first got to know each other and start working very well was on the bond advisory committee for the 2009 bond. We then went after the Board of Trustees at the time approved to go forward with that. We worked together on the campaign to get that bond passed. After each, we had desires to make sure that the bond was implemented appropriately. You had a great wisdom and thoughts of other ways of improving the district, and we both ended up running and serving on the board. We were able to do that. Then we had another election. Then we had another bond election that we were able to help run. Our third election, and then the city of Arlington called on Ms. Sullins to help get a ballpark passed, and we worked on that one together. And many times I think Gerald was thinking, who is this guy that's talking to my wife maybe more than I am? And that was really true. And Gerald, I had lunch with her today, so I said a lot of nice things to her at lunch, but we determined that, Jamie, you're very much my sister. I mean, I've got the deepest admiration, love, and respect for you. I love the term that Mr. Hogg created when he was talking about the Trustee of the Year, the Toy Award trophy, and we laughed about that. But I want to tell the audience, Ms. Sullins is truly the hardest working trustee in the state of Texas. She's an advocate not just for her children, but all children. When she came onto this board, our district was needing to have some major changes. We needed to look at new directions. We needed to look at how we went about offering new opportunities. And the very first thing that Ms. Sullins did when we both got onto the board, she reached out to the Southeast campus of TCC, and they had a brand new president there, and Dr. Bill Capola, and she said, "Can I meet with you?" And she said, "Come on, Hibbs," and as she drugged me along, and we were able to sit down. And at the time, the district had just very few certificate programs. I mean, we had cosmetology, we had a few, but we didn't have very many. The president at TCC Southeast Campus has had some experience of being able to incorporate different certificates programs in. And she said, that's what we need for Arlington. We need a vigorous, vibrant opportunity for our children that are not college-bound, but needs to be able to have an opportunity, to have a skilled position, to have an opportunity when they come out of high school, they can get in high-paying jobs. We can break that generational poverty. I remember the words that she said, the generational poverty that we have in our city. And we can do that through the education. And this year, next week, we're going to be opening up the new Career Tech Center. And that's going to be opening up with over 40 different certificate career opportunities from firefighter academies, police academies, culinary arts, to the whole gamut of HAVC, the different skilled sets. And Ms. Sullins was the driver of that. We have that today because of you. We've got a situation that you were very diligent in working with the board and directing us after you were searching out best practices of school boards across the country. You know, we're looking internally and you're looking externally, and you helped us lead us with the Studer Group and through our strategic plan and to the point of getting to a full curriculum audit and a full facilities audit, and that brought us into a new bond, the largest bond ever in Tarrant County. It's an amazing accomplishment, and it's because of an amazing leader. From an aspect of leading this board, I can tell you that you have done the work of 7 times those that have served. Personally, as a friend, you know, I've just got to tell you, in every aspect of my life, it has been enhanced because of the friendship, the direction. Even when I was going to go off course, she would say, "John, think about this." You've even led me back into the, where I looked at things differently. And because of that, I believe I'm a better trustee. And again, I can't do anything but wish you, the greatest success. I know that you're not stopping your work in education. And I only wish the best for Gerald, you two, to be able to have a nice living style in Austin, and for the kids, impending marriage, and Amanda, for your work that you do for our community too. Again, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Hibbs. What?
I think there's a sign that says John will drive the cats. Thank you, Mr. Hibbs.
As one of the things that is customary, Ms. Sullins, I would ask you to please join myself and Dr. Cavazos down at the podium.
Sure. Okay, now back at you. So.
I know Spence will tap the mic from, oh, he's not there, so, hey. Jamie, I know you've seen this presented in the past, and it's now your time to have.
Your eulogy.
Our photographer is putting some extra words there. It's your time to have this as a reminder of, as you've never forgotten what your focus has always been. It's about these kids, right? This says, thank you for your loyal service to the children of Arlington ISD. Jamie Sullins, on this Jamie Sullins Day, no, it doesn't really say that. Arlington ISD Board of Trustees, 2010 to 2017, 7 remarkable years. I'm so honored to be able to say that I served with you. There you go.
Thank you. Thank you.
There you go.
Thank you.
And Jamie, this is our retirement bowl
Okay.
that we give employees. It's highly sought after. So I would be
Guard
careful with it on your way out.
guard it.
But,
Okay, good deal.
but really, it's a symbol of our appreciation for you and something that you can remember the district for, which I'm sure you have many memories. But
Yeah.
this is something that we give to our employees who have given themselves to our students and our district. So
Thank you.
congratulations.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Cavazos.
Yes. Now, we have one more certificate here.
Oh, that's a good one.
And Mr. Gerald Sullins, could you please step forward? Gerald, this is such a small token. This is a certificate of appreciation presented to Gerald Sullins for the 7 years you allowed us to share Jamie as a member of our family, the AISD Board of Trustees. Gerald, thank you, and wonderful family and soon-to-be family member, sharing all of the sacrifice. We as trustees know what that means for our families. Thank you so much for allowing her to bless this community and make so many opportunities available for our children. I know it's a big sacrifice. Thank you for allowing her to be with us and do some amazing, amazing things. So, Ryan, Amanda, you've got an amazing mom, as I know you know, and Gerald, what an amazing wife. And now, as you move on down to Austin, we're so going to miss you. Thank you so much. That's it's the least we can do for everything that you have allowed her to run with. So, thank you very much.
Appreciate it. I'll say it's just as inspirational for me watching her from the home front as y'all saw her from your side.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very much. Thank you. Well, Gerald can hold something. You want to come on in? Yeah. Family too, if you want. Come on.
I can hold the bowl. Oh, sorry. Thank you. All right, now, my turn, right?
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
and you can do it up there or down
All
here,
right,
whatever you
I
like.
got it. This is good.
All right.
Brace yourselves. Let these guys get back. I know that trick, you know. So first of all, guys, thank you. I do want to formally introduce my family. I know we've talked about them. My amazing husband and hero. We married 34 years. Met when we were 19, and you know, so we're going on our next adventure. Gerald, my Ryan helped me, was my first introduction to Arlington ISD. Ryan, we walked into Butler Elementary, Amanda on my hip, you know, and we it was our first experience with Arlington ISD, and now we are so pleased to have our family growing. Ryan is getting married to the amazing Kristen Jordan, and I am soon to have a new daughter-in-law, and I am just beyond thrilled with it. Thank you for being here this evening. So guys, I've had.
You have another daughter.
I can't believe. Sorry.
I'm being replaced.
Sorry. How did that even happen?
Well, we know
I'm
who
sorry.
rates where.
Well, that just cost some shoes. You know, and I guess that, you know, so many of you had opportunity to work with Amanda through the Arlington Education Foundation, and so I know that a lot of you had opportunity to meet you. Sorry about that, Amanda. My amazing daughter, Amanda, who is also our serial pet adopter and just adopted a new kitten last night. So if you ever have a pet in distress, this is your friend, a heart of gold, and I am so honored to be your mother. It is a true joy. So guys, over the last few weeks and months, as you know, after we go in summer, it's a different kind of rhythm for the school district, right? And so had an opportunity to be in some different trainings or hear some different speakers, and I was listening to them, and I thought of you guys in these. They talked about, was in the Austin area actually, and they're talking about what the schools of the future may look like, and the types of learning and training and opportunities kids need now that are so different than what they were. That we have autonomous cars, you know, right here in Arlington. We have in Dubai, there is a robot police officer that can arrest you, you know, with face recognition software and so forth. Amazon Go, a grocery store that you enter with your cell phone that checks everything out for you, and you just walk out. And it made me think of the important road that we've been on, because today's students can't afford yesterday's comfort zones. And I am so proud that this board has stepped up to that and taken a look at that and keep growing on that horizon. We have had so many interesting and fun conversations over the years, and one of the things we talk about is this growth. You know how I feel about the term continuous improvement. I'll just go ahead and admit that I lost that one, but you know, we talk about how things grow and continuously improve. And this summer they were talking about exponential growth and how things continue to go, but then you get to a point where things just shoot up. And this part down here they were calling the knee bend. And you know, and so we've seen this district move across this in the knee bend, and now the sky's the limit. And there's not a better team in place. I would agree with you, Dr. Cavazos, you're the best superintendent in the nation and the best advocate for school children that I have ever met, and it's been a true honor to work with you. To senior staff and the ones up here and the ones that are back here, I want you to know that I am so proud of the talent and the commitment and the what you bring for student opportunity. It's unprecedented, and it's exciting, and it's compelling, and I am so glad to have been a part. And for Ms. Powell, I'm sorry for the 1,000,003 questions I asked you. I will try to stop at that, but I doubt it. I would like to stay in public education advocacy, so I have your number. To each of you that I have served with, Mr. Hogg, you know, you might have been the very first person I talked to about running for school board and what that interest would be. And it has just been a joy to work with you. And we have had a lot of late nights, and we have had the worst thing ever. You've turned me into a morning person. You know, how that ever happened. Ms. Walton, I appreciate your commitment. You've been with this district for so long, and you have seen every side. And so the next few years are just so exciting. Ms. Mays, you know, so much respect. If you guys do not know or had not had opportunity to get to know Ms. Mace like I have, she is the most reflective listener I've ever met. And that is such an important talent and something that you bring to this board, and it's an honor to know you. Mr. Hibbs, you are my brother, and I'm sorry that I've called you all when you're, Mr. Hibbs travels a lot, but he doesn't tell me, and I don't know he's in another time zone, so it's like 6 in the morning or something. It's like, oops. But thank you. Thank you for the, 5. Thank you for taking those calls, and thank you for always listening and always being there every step of the way. Dr. Reich, from our kitchen table conversations to the board conversations to national discussions, there's no one that has the focus on public policy like you have. I've learned so much from you. And Ms. Hudson, I am so proud to have worked with you and this board, and it has been my true privilege to serve the students and the teachers and the faculties of everyone in Arlington ISD. It is with true love that I have for this district and true excitement that I have for this district, for where you're going and where I know that you can go. And a true excitement also for myself and my family's journey on where we're gonna go. So tonight I hereby proudly tender my resignation of this esteemed Board of Trustees. I do this proudly because I know what an honor it has been to work and serve with you and with these extraordinary individuals that are all before you. Serving as a school trustee is a challenge like no other. It carries a tremendous weight, and I want everyone to realize the weight of the decisions on this group affecting not only employees, but the district and the community, but for generations to come. What a job. What a job that you have. Our decisions respect to curriculum and many other aspects of the school system can alter and help develop tools to nurture or limit our students' opportunity. And what I know about you is no future community leader, no future student, no future Nobel Prize winner will have been stopped because of the work of you guys. I know the work that you do. The people at this table, along with our superintendent and the senior staff, they make difficult decisions every day. But the team of leaders at Arlington Independent School District, you guys are creative. And you're tireless, and you're professional, and you're inspirational, and you're progressive. And for these reasons, we struggle with tough decisions. We've all sat up here and struggled with very, very tough decisions. We know sometimes the decisions that we make are going to upset others. And that is a very hard thing to do, but we have to act in what's best for the children. Students first, and sometimes that creates great conflict. And no one up here is perfect, and certainly including me, and no one has all of the answers, but I'm proud to tell each of you in the community that this team puts self-interest aside and works together to find collective answers in what is best for public education and what's best in what they believe is a true and right decision, regardless of the consequence. And that is one of the reasons I am so very, very proud of you. This team's commitment is true, and their intent is always righteous, and I am proud to have served as a member of this courageous, talented, compassionate team. And I look forward to the road ahead, and I look forward to you all keeping your word and coming to Austin to see me. I know you're going to be there, and our home will always be open. Thank you, and God bless you.
Our plan, Ms. Sullins, you can certainly do what you choose. Our plan was to go through appointments and then have a receiving line for our appointees and have you there in the receiving line as well, so that we can all have an opportunity to say thank you if you're okay hanging on.
Yep.
Okay, very good. So without further ado, next is appointments on the agenda, Mr. Superintendent.
Thank you, President Rice, and I'd like to recommend that the board ratify the appointments of the individuals discussed in closed session for Assistant Principal for Arlington High School, Assistant Principals for Arlington High School, Assistant Principal for Carter, Assistant Principal for Webb Elementary, as discussed in closed session.
Move for approval.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Hogg and a second by Mr. Hibbs to approve the ratification of the spoken administrative appointments. No discussion seen, no lights. Please vote. Oh, I didn't.
Looks worrisome.
Yeah, okay, let's try this
Technical
again.
difficulties.
Okay. Okay, everybody, please vote. Were you guys getting worried? Woo, glad that's done. All votes in the affirmative.
Thank you, President Rice. Our first Assistant Principal for Arlington High School is Ravon Allman-Smith. Ravon attended Louisiana State University for a Bachelor of Arts in Communications, University of Texas at Arlington for a Master of Ed in Ed Leadership. Most recently, the itinerant assistant principal at Arlington High School, has been an assistant principal at Owsley, has taught speech and theater arts at Owsley Junior High, also taught in Greenville ISD and Baton Rouge, as well as a financial analyst and advisor. Ravon, congratulations.
Thank you. Good evening. President Reich, members of the boards, Dr. Cavazos, thank you guys for this opportunity to continue to do what I know that I've been uniquely designed to do, and that's to serve the students and the staff here in Arlington ISD. I want to thank my husband and my son. They are not able to be here tonight, and my family for their prayers and their love and support. Even though my family members are not here, I know that the live viewership should be up tonight because they're watching me tonight. So I thank them for their prayers and support. To Dr. Bill, Mr. Dalla, I thank you, sir, for your confidence that you have in me. I thank you for allowing me to serve at Arlington High for the last 2 years, and to the talented administrative team at Arlington High. I have so much respect for those individuals, and I feel truly blessed to serve in Coke Country, and I really know how sweet it is to be a member of the Coke family. Thank you.
Next, I'd like to introduce the second assistant principal for Arlington High School, Dr. Lacey Carter. Dr. Carter attended Stephen F. Austin for her Bachelor of Science, University of North Texas for Master of Ed in Ed Leadership or Ed Administration, and then the University of North Texas for her Doctorate in Education. Most recently, the Director of School Improvement in the Research and Accountability Office, has been a coordinator for early childhood, has been a director of a private school, has also been an assistant principal, an elementary math coordinator, a 6th grade teacher, a 5th grade teacher of math and science, a teacher of pre-kinder, and a 3rd grade teacher. Dr. Carter, welcome.
President Reich, members of the board, and Dr. Cavazos, thank you and good evening. And congratulations, Ms. Sullivan.
Thank you.
I've been here for 2 years, and I think I have more access to senior staff and the board than a lot of the 8,000 plus employees in this district. Y'all have seen my work for 2 years. You know what I've done. So this is the first time I've ever actually got to talk to you. So I'm going to be shaky a little bit, but I'm going to make it. I don't know when I'll get to do this again. So Dr. Cavazos, dude, you are awesome. I just duded my superintendent in front of our school board. You are the example of great leadership. And I hope you know that I meant that with oodles of respect. Okay. I'll move on. Mr. Scott Kale, I've been privileged to work with you on a number of projects. We've recently had some discussions about things that really matter, and I have found you to be so understanding, and thank you for everything. Dr. Stephen Wirtz, you are so precious to me. You are, I've worked with Dr. Wirtz a lot in 2 years. You are overwhelming and challenging, and that's because you're growing us to be great leaders. You have more focus on what our students are going through and the classroom experiences that we offer them than anybody I've ever seen. And I just thank you for all your efforts to grow me. Dr. Christy Buell, thank you for your role in selecting me for this position. I appreciate your support more than you know, and I look forward to joining you in your area. Dr. Rick Garcia is no longer with the district, but he's the one that decided I belonged here. He saw value in me before I was able to prove it. Dr. Tamla Horton, I appreciate your leadership and guidance. I didn't see her tonight, but she'll hear about this and she'll watch it. You always trusted that I owned my job and have been so supportive in my efforts, and I appreciate you. My darling husband, Jimmy Carter. Yes, Jimmy Carter. Jim and I know where we stand with each other. He's my BFF, and he is unwavering in that role. To the wonderful, wonderful people in the Department of Research and Accountability led by Dr. Kevin Barlow, it's been my honor to serve this district with you. To the great administrative team at Arlington High School, I am already welcomed and accepted and supported, and I plan to return the favor. And last, to the Arlington High School principal, Mr. Shavir Dalla. Your decision to allow me to serve your students is my honor. You have given me a chance that so many would like to have, and I can't thank you enough. I made it. So all I'd like to say now is kick 'em, Colts.
Yeah.
Next, the Assistant Principal for Carter Junior High, Ms. Michelle Cummings. Michelle attended University of Central Florida for Bachelor of Science in Elementary Ed, University of Central Florida for Master of Ed in Ed Leadership. Most recently, a Title I Support Dean at Patrick Elementary. Has also been a support dean at Crouch Elementary. Has taught 5th grade, 3rd grade, and kinder. Michelle, congratulations.
Thank you so much. President Reich, members of the board, and Dr. Cavazos, thank you for this opportunity that you've given me. Over the past 9 years, I've had the honor of working with some amazing, amazing leaders. Dr. Jacqueline Orsini, who's no longer with the district, Mr. Matthew Brown, Christopher Barnes, Tana Brooks, and Ms. Tracy Brown most recently. I am eternally thankful that they were placed in my life. To my parents and my sister and my extended family watching all the way in Florida, thank you for your unconditional love and support. To my amazing husband who's sitting in the back because he didn't want to sit over here in the family section. And my 2 beautiful daughters at home, thank you for always believing in me and challenging me to do more and to be more. Nelson Mandela once said that education is the greatest weapon that we can use to change the world. And I am excited and I am enthusiastic and I am ready to do that job at Carter Junior High School. I look forward to working with all of the wonderful staff and the wonderful people and embracing all of the students and just making this year the best it can be. Thank you all for your support. Thank you for this opportunity, and God bless.
Next, I'd like to introduce the new Assistant Principal for Webb Elementary, Mr. Cedric Boyd. Cedric attended Grambling State University for Bachelor of Arts in Mass Communications and Public Relations, Texas Southern University for Master in Public Administration, Public Policy. Most recently, an 8th grade science and department teacher in Fort Worth ISD, and has taught 4th grade math and science in Irving ISD and has been a site coordinator as well. Cedric, congratulations.
Thank you. Good evening, Dr. Rice, board, and Dr. Cavazos. Thank you guys so much for this opportunity. I would like to thank especially my mentors who brought me to this moment throughout my whole career, with emphasis on Ms. Lopez, who saw something. I know she's here. Oh, there she is. Emphasis on her because she saw something in me when she could have chose a lot of other applicants. She went with a heart, and she went with someone she knows is going to lead Webb into the direction that we know it can go towards. Especially want to thank my family. It's just two of them, my beautiful wife, Tajay Boyd, and the little girl you guys see running around here, that's Marlo. She'll be going through Arlington ISD next year. She's 3, so when she becomes of age, she'll be going through this wonderful district. And they're my biggest cheerleaders. They listen to all my complaints. It's a lot of them. But they're always on board with me. They sacrificed time while I pursued this opportunity, and I'll be eternally grateful to them both for that. And last but not least, I want to thank God for just steering me towards Arlington ISD. I've admired this ISD since I was 5 years old. I'm an Army brat, so I never got a chance to sit in one school district, but I've had family here, and just seeing this city and this district grow so much has made me envious, and I thank God he's finally got me to this district where I can grow in my career. Thank you guys so much.
Outstanding. Before we move on to the next section, I'd be remiss if I didn't acknowledge it was our not realizing that we have Miles from Representative Chris Turner's office in the audience. If you could stand to be recognized. Thank you for being here. And with that said, as is our custom, we ask that the appointees and Mrs. Sullins please follow Mr. Kale to the lobby for a receiving line so each of us can welcome you. Please let the board go first. We'd appreciate it so that we can take a brief break and then get right back to business. The time is 8:09, 8:10. We'll reconvene at 8:20. Thank you. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We will continue on with our meeting and our agenda. As mentioned at the beginning, we deferred the Citizens Bond Oversight Committee presentation, so we can go forth with that part of our agenda. Mr. Superintendent, anything?
Thank you, President Rice, and we're going to have our CBOC presentation. Cindy?
President Rice, board members, Dr. Cavazos, good evening. This board, beginning with our 2009 bond program, found it important and very valuable to seat a Citizens Bond Oversight Committee to add transparency to our process and monitor our work with bond programs to ensure that we were living up to the commitment we made to our voters in terms of the projects that we had planned and the way that we carried out our work. And that committee has continued forward through the 2014 bond program. And these are always very interesting groups. They're very engaged. They ask great questions. We try to rotate the meetings around to different locations so that the committee members can actually see the work that's being done. And that's always the funnest part of the meeting, is touring facilities and seeing our progress. And so tonight we have several of the committee members here, and I'm going to let the committee chair do introductions or ask them to stand collectively. But Will Dekine is the committee chair, and he will be bringing forth an interim report from the committee this evening.
President Reich, members of the Board of Trustees, Dr. Cavazos, thank you for having us here this evening to present our observations on the bond. Tonight we're going to provide an interim update to the 2014 school bond. I'm going to discuss with you briefly the purpose of our Citizens Bond Oversight Committee, our composition, going to discuss the meeting schedule that we adhered to, then we're going to evaluate our charge, what you asked us to do, and report on that, provide recommendations, and then I'd like to provide some special thanks to those on your staff and within the district that have been of great assistance to us. Specifically, our purpose as a Citizens Bond Oversight Committee is to provide transparency to the citizens of the school district and of this community, and to enhance the public's confidence that the school bond is doing what it was advertised to do. We are to provide findings and recommendations on the expenditures, the progress that is being made, and provide recommendations on ways to maximize the potential of that bond program. We are a group of 17 volunteers. 11 are official members that are then backed up by 6 alternates. We're from the community. We're lawyers, we're realtors, we're engineers, we're taxpayers, we're parents of students, we're former students. We are a cross-section of this community, and I believe are a fair representation of the district at large. We met 5 times in the past year. 3 of those were quarterly meetings. The first meeting we had was an orientation that was at the Professional Development Center. The 3 quarterly meetings were held at McNutt Elementary, Peach Elementary, and then the Jones Academy. And then finally we met in August to come together and deliberate our observations and recommendations to present to you and to the citizens of this community. We interpreted the charge that you provided our oversight committee as having 11 components to it, and we will address each of those 11 components in the following manner. We'll discuss our observations as a committee, and we'll discuss any recommendations that we have. Specifically, the first charge was to understand what was the purpose behind the bond, as identified by the Capital Needs Steering Committee in 2014. Our observation was that the AISD staff did an excellent job of not only communicating the Capital Needs Steering Committee recommendations, but also laying out what the bond program strategically was supposed to do and how that linkage existed between your strategic plan for the district and the bond and application of the bond. Our recommendation in this regard is to keep doing what you're doing. You have a tremendous staff. They did a fantastic job orienting not only existing members but new members to the committee and helping to explain again the purpose and the scope of the bond program. Our second charge was to review the process that is used to not only solicit but qualify and select design professionals, contractors during the course of the bond program. Your staff did an excellent job of providing us with an understanding of how the requests for quotes were created, explained that bidding process, the rigors behind it, the selection criteria, and then provided a significant amount of examples with in-stride rebidding and processes related to the project management and updating as we go along throughout the bond program. Our recommendation as a committee is to continue to utilize the appropriate contractual tools to motivate contractor performance. Our third charge was to review reports on the current status and the planned status of projects within the bond. We observed that the facility construction efforts appeared consistent with the bond's intent. We observed that the fine arts efforts appeared consistent with the bond's intent. The safety, security, and technology efforts also appeared consistent with the bond's intent. And finally, the transportation efforts appeared consistent with the bond's intent. Our recommendation with regards to this charge is to perhaps look at ways that success metrics or key performance indicators could be tied to demonstrate the intended effect at identified milestones. What I mean by that is an example. The bond program was designed to provide access to students, musical instruments, take bands, high school bands, for example. Through the bond program, we were able to knock down some barriers and make available that opportunity to students. And this year, directly related to the bond's efforts, we had all 6 of the high schools achieve a superior distinction at their marching band competition in the fall, which, to my collective memory, the last time that happened was in the 90s when we only had 5 high schools at the time, let alone 6. You know, that was achieved through the efforts of the bond, and tying a linkage between here's what we want to do with the bond and the effect that occurs when the bond is implemented correctly, and identifying those milestones and communicating those to the community, I think are very effective in explaining what we're doing with the bond program and how it is impacting our students. The 4th charge of our committee was to review the bond program reports that track budgets, encumbrance, expenditures, and the estimated costs for the completion of the bond project. We were provided with lots and lots of data and information related to construction efforts, project efforts, and were provided a very clear lens into the inner workings of what was going on. We took a look at the overall bond expenditure and kind of developed our version of a glide path just by averaging how much should we spend per year over the life of the bond, just as a hypothetical, here's where our glide path would be. And then we looked at where we were at with our expenditures and encumbrances in April of each year. So we're in year 3 now, and as this chart off to the side shows, you can see initially we were slow to move, shall we say, during the initial planning and preparation stages of this, but we're very rapidly accelerating to meet the bond schedule. We acknowledge that we have observed their project timelines have shifted in some cases in order to facilitate cost management or to take advantage of doing things that would occur at the same location earlier in the schedule versus later. We also acknowledge that in some cases where you had perhaps an underperforming contractor, that the staff is making efforts to not only remediate the situation, but in some cases go out for rebid. In essence, find new contractors to pick up the workload. So that demonstration of active management, active project management of these different projects, I think is evidence that we were very interested in observing. And our recommendation is to continue with that current staff level activity that occurs to track and monitor and manage those projects. You have an excellent team doing so. They're watching it very carefully. And again, please continue that. We do recognize that we'd recommend there are ways to maybe explore how we could publicly explain to communities the different array of tools that are available through contract management, through project management, to keep our contractors on task. If there's any question in the community of, well, are we doing everything we can do, or what are we bringing to bear to make sure we're getting the performance to maximize our value, we could probably find some additional efforts that we can communicate that to the community. Our 5th charge was to review the hub utilization on facilities projects. Historically underutilized businesses as of April of 2017 were at approximately 18%. The previous CBOC committee recommended that the Board of Trustees consider establishing a target. At that time, the recommendation was to perhaps look at something around the 20% mark. Our recommendation from this committee is to monitor that hub participation by the vendors, and not only monitor it, but track it and consider that in rebidding when they come up for additional contracts. How did you perform earlier when you said you would provide a certain percentage? Are you meeting your goals? Are you beating your goals? Have that be part of that selection criteria when awarding future contracts. The 6th charge was to review the internal and external audits of the bond program to ensure that they were adequate in scope and that the responses were appropriate. Well, it was clear that there are internal audits underway And information specific to dedicated internal audits will be made available to our committee in late August of 2017, which we will review. However, there's obvious evidence that we are managing our projects and paying close attention to those schedules and those expenditures. We also know that the AISD staff is working with an external audit service to identify potential projects for external auditing as well, and believe that when those are made available to us, we will review them diligently as well. Our recommendation is to kind of provide us with an audit criteria for review, give us a little bit of an insight into what you're looking for internally and externally in your audit profiles, and additionally continue to provide our committee with general explanations when contractors fail to perform. And it's important to note that at any point in time, we were provided as much detail or as little as we requested, but in general, we were kept very well aware of the progress of each project and what was going on. And at a high level, I think that that's very appropriate to continue with our efforts to follow through with this charge. The seventh charge of our committee is to review and provide input on the AISD communications to the public regarding the bond program. Our observation is that there have been some tremendous improvements in your dashboarding out on your website. Those dashboards are very clear, easy to understand. They're a snapshot that makes it very easy to understand where we're at on a particular project, and we would encourage the continued use of those and perhaps further development of those tools, but a marked improvement nonetheless. We also appreciate the project photo archive that is also available on the website. People can look on the website and see the progress in photos, can see the construction as it goes along, can see how great it is at the end when we're finally dedicating a particular facility or construction is finished. Our recommendation is to look at providing avenues to specifically address concerns or perhaps frequently asked questions about project delays or changes, potentially through the website, newsletters, or mailings. And what we mean by that is a lot of times we hear, the community hears, hey, there's something not quite right going on, and understanding within the legal bounds of the contract what you can and can't say, perhaps the messaging to the community of, yes, we're a little behind here, or nope, we're ahead of schedule there, will help the community kind of understand where we're at. Again, understanding that there are contractual constraints that do prevent us from saying too much or too little about what's going on, but maybe look at ways to help provide the community with a little update when maybe there is a little hitch going on. Our eighth charge is with the coordination of the superintendent or his designee, conduct on-campus visits. Well, we've been doing that. We had the opportunity to see McNutt, Peach, and Jones Academy. And in addition to those meeting locations, members of our committee have conducted individual on-site visits to Butler Elementary, Duff Elementary, Arlington High School, and Martin High School as well. The recommendation we have going forward into the future is that we'd like to have some of our group visits focused on not only the new construction or significant modeling efforts, but let's look where we have existing facility upgrades. So spend some more time looking at the older campuses and the good work going on there. Our observations at some of these existing campus locations brings me to our next recommendation. In a future bond, potentially look at increasing your program contingency budget allocation as it relates to specific schools that are older. And by that we mean we know in some cases perhaps there was an orchestra room that was getting upgraded, and by chance it required in the end we needed to upgrade the bathrooms across the hall in the process. Well, we've got to bring them up to code now. It wasn't something we originally scoped, but some of these things that we find in the progress of going through some of our older structures and refurbishing them as well come up. So perhaps look at, in future bonds, increasing that contingency a little bit more to handle some of that load. Our ninth charge was to agree by majority vote upon all these findings and recommendations. Everything we're presenting tonight, the committee unanimously agreed to, and it is essentially the majority vote to what we are presenting to you. When our CBOC members were not present at meetings, their inputs were either solicited through email or they were contacted through email. All of the meeting materials were made available as well. We also observed that, frankly, participation by the SLAB members was a bit limited. And we recommend taking a look at that. Specifically, we know there's a charge for the SLAB members to participate, and they are made up of high school, junior class presidents. There might be more folks out there interested in participating and being part of that. And so perhaps we could look at ways to, look for other students that might be interested in participating, that this is interesting to them, that they'd like to come out. But, frankly, within the committee itself, we're going to look at ways to try to incorporate them in a more meaningful and impactful way. Obviously, as a high school junior, they have kind of a limited scope of, they know their school and they see what's going on at their school, and it's good for them to understand the broader picture of what's going on, but perhaps they don't feel that they have as much to contribute. And so what I think we want to try to focus on is our own internal committee is, let's focus on letting them report on what they see at their location and integrate that into our reporting in the future. Meanwhile, perhaps we can look at other ways of getting other students that are interested involved to bring them in the fold as well. Our 10th charge is to provide a semi-annual or more frequently report to the Board of Trustees on any and all of our findings. Our observation is that these interim briefings are probably at the right pace and tempo on a semi-annual basis. That seems appropriate to us. What we would do to make a recommendation to adjust here, though, is that we think that before school's out in May, we should be back here reporting on what we have observed. So catch everyone before we wind down for the summer to kind of get a snapshot of, okay, here we are before we go into the summer, and that'll kind of help understand where we're at when we come into the next school year as well. We also want to do a better job of including the students in the report as well. Our 11th charge, finally, coordinate with the superintendent or his designee to maintain a presence on the AISD website. Thankfully, all of our meeting materials are made available and easily accessible through the website. That level of transparency not only do we appreciate, but we think it's very helpful in the community understanding the good activities that are occurring within the district. The photos, the financials, the dashboards that are all easily accessible are to be commended as well on the website. We'd like to recommend that we continue with the development of products such as those dashboards and look at other interfaces for the community to gain information easily on specific projects and the overall big picture of the general bond execution. The following two slides are a summary of the recommendations to which I've just briefed you. I'll move through them. We can always go back if there are any questions and address them specifically. But in closing, I would like to thank several folks who have done a tremendous job helping not only our understanding, but helping us execute our charge. Keisha Mays, our chair of the Community Engagement Committee, thank you. Dr. Reich as well. Polly, you've been there several times sitting there with us. We appreciate that. I really cannot emphasize enough, and I know you know what a diamond you have in Cindy Powell, but her professionalism is second to none, and her staff and the folks working with her, Kelly Horn, Javier Fernandez, Chad Branham, Dr. Earnhardt, Tim Collins, James Smith, Tony Drollinger, Craig Wright, and Ginger Pulsar, they all were tremendous, not only representing the district, our students, but the information they provided and the lengths that they were willing to go to answer our questions is truly remarkable. And my experience in corporate America really, I think, gives me some insight to how tremendous your staff really is and how lucky we are to have them working for us in this community. So without any further ado, if you have any questions, I'd like to answer them as best I can. We do have members of our committee here as well tonight: Seth Russell, Suzanne Kelly, and David Wilbanks, myself. With that, I'd like to open it up for questions.
Thank you, Mr. DeKine, and to you three, thank you for being here, and to all four of you, I really appreciate your patience and understanding with the rescheduling of the ordering of the agenda tonight. Great work, great presentation, Let's see, we do have some questions from the board. First up is Mr. Hibbs.
Mr. Kine?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. A great presentation. I appreciate the words that you have spoken to about Ms. Powell and her team. We feel the very same thing. And as a finance committee, we get many of your reports. We get a lot of the feedback, a lot of the individual items that you discuss at the same time that we're discussing potential scope changes. And Mr. Hogg and Ms. Walton, you mentioned that sometimes we've even taken things back and out for rebid, and that comes many times after discussion with your committee. And we've just recently done that with a couple of projects. So we appreciate your work on that aspect. And then I also wanted to share with you from an audit standpoint, where Ms. Mays and Ms. Hudson and myself serve on a committee there also, is one of the recommendations that you were talking about, doing the audits of different projects and ensuring the district received everything that it was promised in any one of those projects. We took action even tonight to go back and to review different projects, audit projects, and we'll begin one immediately with Peach Elementary. And there'll be a number of construction bids that we'll look at, or programs that we'll look at accordingly throughout the fall and into next spring. So I appreciate that you, as a committee, recognize that, brought those things back. So what I'm trying to make sure of is that it's reinforcing the purpose of your committee and the hard work that each one of you are doing. And so I want to tell you, you're valued and just really amazing servants for our community and for our district. With that, I just want to express my appreciation. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Hibbs. Mrs. Mays.
Thank you, President Reich. Thank you for everyone that served on this committee. I have one question before I say some other things, and it's rhetorical. Will y'all come back? Go
Yes.
out online right now. Thank you so much for offering to lead this committee. Most people that know me know that this committee is very dear to me. I feel very strongly about transparency, and I'm very happy that this committee is still going on. I'm very happy for the relationship that the staff has with providing the information that you need. I want to make sure that people understand that this committee was not created to just say yes, 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 AISD staff. Oh, yes, trustees, we're going to say what you want to hear. Y'all have done exactly what the expectation and intent was when we created this committee, and that was to ask the questions. That was to present recommendations to us that we take back and we take very seriously, and we'll be responding in one way or another to the recommendations that were made. First of all, because they're very useful. Second of all, just to show how much we appreciate that the time that you took was very important, and we do take it seriously. So once again, thank you very much. I also want to point out one other thing that I really appreciate that you did, and that was pointing out and acknowledging the diversity of this committee. The diversity in many ways, being the spread out throughout the district, being the diversity of culture, being the diversity of occupations. And that was purposefully done, and I think that it's working beautifully because, once again, the committee is to represent the entire community where the bond money is being spent. So once again, really appreciate the job that you've done. Thank you for the recommendations that we will take very seriously. Really appreciate the work. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Mays. Mr. Hogg.
Thank you, President Reich, and Mr. Kine. Thank you, and all the committee also. Ms. Mays, I agree with your comments, and you made exactly right there. I was going to ask if we could have staff give us ideas and recommendations on these recommendations, because I think these are really good recommendations on how to improve. And I appreciate the board and this whole group for doing this. This is not a required committee. Something we didn't have to do. And it's something I think, not only provides transparency, it helps us. It's a big bond project to oversee. There's 7 of us up here. There's staff members. Having more eyes on a project is never a bad thing. Mr. Giant, let me ask the question that keeps haunting me on this bond. When we bid this bond and put it out, it's an aggressive bond. Construction costs have gone up almost 30% since we bid this bond. Every project, our staff is doing a really good job at keeping them as close to budget. And like with any bond, some are going to go, like any project, you just redid your whole house, redone some projects go way over, and some, doesn't feel like mine are ever under budget. But sometimes they are under budget, especially with these projects. We've been doing work in this district for a long time. I see that. I think this chart's really good. What our glide path's going to be. Is there other concern, or I guess I'd ask the committee what y'all are doing extra to make sure from that financial standpoint, and also if we do get close, are there projects that we don't think have to be completed at this moment on this bond to stay within our budget? It's a broad question. I guess I'm just asking, what's the committee's thoughts on, are we hitting that glide path where we need to be, or do we need to be picking apart more because of the increase in cost in construction?
I'm going to say that very question seems to come up at every meeting we have.
Yeah, good.
And the evidence that we see by the staff, the measures that they are taking with their contract enforcement, the continual review of not only what the individual projects are that are undergoing, that are in progress, but also evaluating those that are coming and always looking for those cost opportunities. It's clear to us that the district staff is doing everything in its power to manage this as effectively as possible. At this point in time, it looks like we're going to come in right about where we think we are, but that makes the assumption that we continue the diligent efforts to mind our expenditures and watch very carefully. Now, a lot of the phase 1, phase 2 projects, a lot of them were new construction or, significant remodels, to almost call it new construction. That's sometimes a lot easier to predict what your costs are going to be. There are moments when you do get surprises, geotech, bore reportings, et cetera, that maybe tell you, hey, what was hidden behind the wall or underground wasn't what we expected. But I think by and large, as we're now moving into a lot more of the refurbishment of existing facilities, we may learn some things that we didn't know when we initially scoped the capital needs. And I think that the staff is doing everything in its power to ensure that those are, the original intent of the bond is being met, and that what we said we were going to deliver gets delivered. I also believe that if we don't continue to keep the pressure up and we think, oh, we're on glide path, this is going to be easy, we're going to miss an opportunity to really maximize our budget. So our committee is already starting to discuss moving forward at our meetings, the things that we want to keep an eye on to help provide that transparency. And as you well know, it's a moving target, and we have to watch it carefully. And I think that you have a tremendous staff that is doing a very good job monitoring that, and contract enforcement, et cetera. I mean, it takes a lot of nerve to go out and rebid something. I mean, that's tough. We're going to pull this future contract and give it to somebody else. It's a big deal, and it is not something that we have observed that the staff is taking lightly whatsoever.
I appreciate that, and you're right. I know as when we get those back and we rebid contracts, it's like we're rebidding, but anything we need to do to save the district. And the last thing I'd leave it on, I appreciate the committee, is I haven't seen anything in this bond yet. I know it's happened in bonds in the past. When you pass a bond, it takes 5 years to build it. The worst thing I think can happen is you build something that you thought you needed 5 years ago and now you don't need. So I'd just ask you for the committee to keep eyes and ears open. I know all of us do. If there's something, the needs of the district have changed, the worst thing you would do is build something because we thought we needed it 5 years ago when we truly don't need it. I haven't identified anything like that in this bond yet, but I always ask the committee to keep their eyes and ears open to make that necessity. And the example I use long time ago, a bond was passed to build a new elementary school in Dalrymple Gardens, and then that wasn't needed. And luckily, the boards before us had the insight to not do that as a whole. So I think those are commendable things, and I just ask that committee to keep the eyes and ears open always for those type of things.
Thank you, Mr. Hogg. Ms. Hudson.
Thank you, President Reich. Thank you so much for your presentation today. The contribution of this committee is just really, really valued by this board. I have a couple of questions just to clarify. When you guys volunteer to serve on the committee, what's the length of your term?
If I'm remembering correctly, it's initially a 2-year term, but there's an opportunity to put your name back in the hat and continue and serve. And
I thought so, yeah.
Many of us do. It is rewarding and meaningful, and it's an honor for many of us.
I think that's wonderful. That's a huge, huge commitment to make. My first year, I had the pleasure of sitting in on some of these meetings, and the sheer volume of information that is thrown at you guys to digest, and the level of questions that comes back to staff, I think it's really remarkable. And it's a statement of you guys and of our community, and that sort of beautiful give and take between this district and the community that we serve. To hear from you guys. I have one quick question. Was this the first year that we had SLAB students actively sitting on the committee? No? Second year?
No, ma'am.
Second year? Okay. I was trying to remember that. And aside from hearing from the SLAB students who are attending as committee members, how often do you guys get to hear from students presenting about whatever, maybe the band or any projects that have been going on and how they've impacted them?
The membership by students has been a challenge. We have had students come, and whenever they've been present, we've asked them for any thoughts, input, and opinions that they have. I think that we can do a better job going forward as a committee establishing some structure around that. To your point, can we pull in some band members or specifically ask a member of the SLAB to go talk to some band members and give us some information to report back? I think that that's something that we will definitely incorporate as we're moving forward. Again, our committee feels there are probably students out there that are not junior class presidents that would be very interested in participating and observing this process, and perhaps looking at ways to make that opportunity available to them, or somehow coordinate those efforts would only strengthen the recommendations and really the observations of our committee.
The very first year that I was on the board attending the CBOC meetings, we got to hear from a young man who had just gone through the fire academy. And his words were so impactful because it was a personal testimonial. He spoke about how he genuinely wasn't that engaged in school until he was given a purpose. And now he graduated not only with a purpose but with a career plan. And I just think really hearing from the people that are being impacted the most, namely our students, might be very helpful for the committee. And I appreciate the SLAB students' commitment and their attendance and their perspective, but I think also maybe sharing some other student perspectives. I appreciate that recommendation from you guys. So thank you very much.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Ms. Hudson. I can't thank you enough. I think it's wonderful that we're able to have a process, as Mr. Hogg said, that we didn't have to do. It's a completely optional thing that we put in place to have more eyes on what the community voted for, what the community wants. For all of your time and your service, it is such a great feeling to know, like what Ms. Hudson was talking about, the impact on the students. That's what it's all about. And it is the recommendations I feel are very sound, and I do look forward to what those might look like, as Mr. Hogg said, to maybe get an idea of working with staff and the committee to try to come up with some ideas there. We're always striving for better, and ultimately it leads to a better process, leads to better opportunities for our students. Thank you so much for being here, for the work on the committee, for volunteering your time, maybe renewing, hopefully, maybe not, putting in your name when those terms are are up. I guess in closing, I do have a question related to the level of over-unders. I know you said that you feel like we're past a lot of new facility construction. There may be some surprises, but maybe we'll be smooth. What avenues or paths are you looking at as a committee to try to be proactive and address that moving forward in working with staff versus staff maybe coming to you saying this is what we have? Have you thought about that in that lens at all?
To an extent, I would say that a lot of the information that we're using to review activities within the district and the projects are provided by the staff, and when it's presented to us, we are evaluating it and asking additional questions follow through. I think that our efforts to get out to these locations, to get to some of these sites, to continue to firsthand see and observe the work that is being done will help us understand the potential of additional questions or avenues to pursue. I think we would certainly be open to any additional recommendations, ideas, thoughts from the community at large on, where else should we be looking as well. It is a true skill to take the mountains of data and information and distill it down to meaningful and understandable bits. And that communication component, I think, is really critical to our understanding of what's really going on. And again, the staff itself needs to be lauded for their efforts in that regard. And I think continuing forward as we are, we will continue to do our due diligence and understand the situation.
Certainly, and yeah, Ms. Powell and everybody else that has been mentioned that's on that slide, thank you. You give so much of your extra time putting in and going through the explanations to make sure that it is absolutely as clear as can be and transparent as possible, and that really speaks so highly of your character and integrity and speaks volumes for our district. So thank you guys for all that you do. I don't see any further lights, so I don't think there's any other questions from trustees at this point. We look forward to your continued work, and again, thank you all for being here and for your service, what you do.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Next, let's see, public hearing. We have no public hearing, so now we come to the open forum for agenda items. This is a routine part of the school board's agenda for regularly scheduled meetings. This segment of the meeting provides citizens with an opportunity to share their views with trustees on items that are on the agenda tonight. It's not intended to be discussion or debate. Trustees will not reply to the speakers. Derogatory comments aimed at individuals will not be tolerated. Personnel matters are not appropriate subjects for this open forum. I have 2 cards from our audience. When your name is called, please step to the podium. You'll have 5 minutes to speak. A lighted timer on the podium will assist you in pacing your presentation. A yellow light will illuminate when there's 1 minute left, and left for you to complete your presentation. When the red light comes on and the buzzer sounds, please end your presentation. So 2 cards. The first one up is Mr. Jeffrey Harris, representing UEA, subject Mrs. Sullins.
Dr. Reich, members of the board, and Dr. Cavazos, I'm Jeffrey Harris with UEA, and we just wanted to thank President Sullins for her time on the board. I've worked with her for years on teacher issues and on talking about student achievement and what we can do as a district to make it the very best. And again, we'd just like to thank her for her service. Thank you.
Thank you. Second speaker, Miss Elisa Simmons, representing the Arlington NAACP. Subject is filling unexpired seat, place 5.
Good evening, President Reich, trustees, Dr. Cavazos. On behalf of the Executive Committee, the NAACP, I am here to speak to our position as it relates to filling the Place 5 seat that was recently retired or vacated by Trustee Sullins. And in her absence, I will let you all know that it was the consensus of the leadership of my board, which we have 25 executive committee members, to extend its greatest appreciation to Mrs. Sullins for her commitment and tireless work during her tenure on the board. We understand this is not an easy job that you all have, and you have many constituencies. And so what I will say about Jamie is that her interest in our work, the mission of the NAACP was authentic. It was genuine. She kept in touch with us. I recall a day that she called and said, "Hey, you're going to get a call from a student at TCU. They want to know how to start an NAACP over there." And I told them that I knew you. And so that student called, and we got the ball rolling over there. And that was Jamie meeting a student. We have the AXO program that most of you are familiar with. It's our 9th through 12th grade scholarship program. And she was this district's biggest cheerleader for that program. She called. She wanted to know, how do we help you guys boost participation? Her interest in this association was genuine. And so for her service and for that, we are thankful, and we extend well wishes to the Sullins family. As you consider filling the vacancy on the board tonight, please know that the Arlington NAACP contends that the leadership on the school board and in school administration should reflect the diversity of the community. The lack of racial and ethnic diversity on the Board of Trustees is evident. It is a fact that the makeup of AISD's governing body is disproportionately white in a district with a student population with a 78% minority population. The largest two demographics being Hispanics at 44.5%, approximately 44.5%, and African Americans at 22.5%. Our hope is that the school board leadership will recognize its responsibility to embrace a more inclusive future, one that provides representation for the largest demographic groups enrolled in the school system. Our position is that a special election should be held to elect a new board member. However, you may decide tonight to hold and appoint a replacement. And so here are a couple of bullet points from our executive committee, and that is that the citizens of Arlington should be a part of the process and decision. We should have the opportunity to vet candidates and determine the characteristics of our desired representative. The new board member, in our estimation, should be representative of the diversity that exists within the district. Again, this is a district that has a 78% minority population, and the new board member should be a person of color. We expect that the board will refrain from appointing a former or retired elected or previously appointed trustee. While we contend that the at-large method of electing trustees leaves African Americans, Hispanics, and other communities of color disenfranchised in a district which represents a majority of the population, in the case of replacing a retired trustee, our expectation is that a special election be conducted to fill the vacated seat. While we understand that an election wouldn't take the politics out of school board leadership or guarantee diversity, it would at least hold its members accountable to the public, and the candidates would have to present their agendas and prove their commitment to children's welfare and the issues. So, if you choose to make an appointment, we have a short list of capable and qualified individuals that should receive strong consideration from trustees, and we have forwarded that list to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Simmons. Appreciate it. Okay. That concludes our open forum for agenda items, seeing no other cards. And there are no other cards, correct? Okay, thank you, Ms. Benjamin. So next on our agenda, we come to action items. The first of which, item A, consider ordinance number 137, setting the 2017 tax rate. Mr. Superintendent.
Thank you, President Rice, and I'd like to bring before the board the setting of the tax rate for 2017. Ms. Powell has a brief presentation.
President Rice, board members, Dr. Cavazos, good evening. We do have for your consideration this evening a proposed tax rate for the 2017 tax year. On June 22nd, this board adopted the budget for the 17-18 fiscal year. And also on that night, we held a public hearing, as required by law, on the proposed budget and the proposed tax rate. Our fiscal year begins July 1, and as required by law, we have to adopt the budget before our fiscal year begins. It's a little odd in that we do not have our certified property values at the time we adopt our budget, and this is not unique to us. There are a number of public school districts in Texas that have a July 1 fiscal year start date, and so they face the same interesting dynamic. But when we prepare our budget to bring to you in June, we estimate what our property values are going to be using preliminary data that we get from the Tarrant Appraisal District. Then, July 25th, we actually receive our certified values from Tarrant Appraisal District, and we use those values to come back to you, as we are tonight, to set the tax rate. So, our certified property values from the Tarrant Appraisal District this year topped $26.1 billion. That's actually a little bit higher than what we had estimated. In June when we prepared our revenue budgets. We had anticipated that property values would go up right at 8%, 7.98%, and the actual increase that we saw when we received our certified values was an increase of 9.5%. So a little better than we had anticipated. So the rate that we are presenting for your consideration this evening totals $1.36867. That's actually a 2.1 cent decrease from last year's tax rate. And as you can see here, there are actually two parts to our tax rate. We have an M&O, or Maintenance and Operations tax rate. That's the rate that provides the dollars that funds just the day-to-day cost of running our district in the general fund. That rate currently for this past year has been $1.04, and we are recommending that we keep that at $1.04. Actually, by law, if we go up even a fraction of a penny above $1.04, that would trigger the requirement for a tax ratification election. So this evening we are proposing that we hold that rate the same at $1.04, so no increase there. On the debt service side, that's where we actually have a bit of a decrease, a little over 2 cent decrease in the proposed tax rate. With our debt service rate, we are levying a tax that will repay the principal and interest on our bonds that are due in the upcoming year. And so with our property values increasing the 9.5% this year, we are able to raise the dollars we need with a lesser tax rate. So we were able to lower that rate by just over 2 cents. So again, with the debt service rate, we strictly levy a tax that will raise just enough to pay our principal and interest always. That proposed tax rate is actually a little over a half penny less than what we thought it might be when we came to you all in June. and showed you a proposed rate for debt service. So again, that's good news. On the general fund side of our budget, our higher our property values will actually generate a little over $4 million of additional revenue beyond what we brought to you in our budget in June. That reflects the combination of current year taxes and state aid and even our TIF revenues and expenditures. We talk a lot about state aid, and we all know that our state funding system is a shared funding system. The state is supposed to pick up part of the cost of funding public ed, and local property owners, through property taxes, pick up the rest. It's worth pointing out to people that even when our property taxes go up, in the end, we don't ultimately receive more money because of this equalized funding system. Property values are one of the components that go into the state funding formulas. So if the higher our property values are, the less state aid we get. And from one year to the next, as our property values go up, we will see state aid come down. So if we were to choose to lower our M&O rate tonight, simply because our property values have gone up, we would lessen our current year tax collections this year, and then next year in state aid we would see another reduction. There's a 1-year lag in when property values affect state aid. So this year's property values will get plugged into the state funding formulas next year, and we would see a reduction next year in state aid, along with our reduced current our local property tax collection. So it's an odd thing. We're different than cities and counties. Cities, when they levy a tax, they are not subject to an equalized system like we are. So they have a little more flexibility there, whereas we are somewhat in a box. And this is the whole pretense of why, or a big part of why, more than 600 school districts brought suit against the state several years ago over the funding system. We are in a box with the way that the system works, and even if your property values go up over a period of years, you will not generate additional revenues in total. So, and this slide somewhat demonstrates that. Back in 2008, when our current funding system was still in its infancy, that shared funding arrangement was really at a 50-50 split. Local property owners footed roughly 50% of the cost of education, and the state paid 50% of the cost. This past year, because property values have continued to rise since 2008, that mix has slipped a great deal, and the burden of funding public ed has shifted dramatically to local property owners. The legislative session that adjourned in May, and now the special session that adjourned just this week, there were school finance bills in both those sessions, and in neither session were the two chambers, the Senate and the House, able to come to agreement on a school finance package to increase the state's funding towards public ed. So we will continue to see this split get bigger, if you will. And I think by 2019, the state share will drop all the way down to roughly 37%. With school districts picking up 60% of the tab at that point. So unless and until there's a change in the state funding system by the legislature, we all, not just Arlington ISD, are going to experience this continued shifting burden onto local property owners. So our recommendation, though, for the tax rate, the 2017 tax rate, is that we adopt a rate of $1.36867 for this year, and that we continue to monitor our property values. They change throughout the year. Our certified values are certified on a particular day at the moment that the appraisal district takes that snapshot, and those will continue to change along with collection rates. Should we see a need to make an adjustment to bump our revenues up, we will do that with the mid-year budget amendment. That's been our normal practice. So that brings us to the motion language that's required to adopt the rate. It's a little confusing because we are, as we've just mentioned, we're actually lowering our tax rate by a little over 2 cents. But the state prescribes truth in taxation laws that set forth particular requirements on how you adopt a rate. And in a case like ours, where our tax rate will actually generate more real dollars than we had last year, we have to use language in the motion that says that we will move, that we set a property tax rate to, it will increase, or property tax rate be increased by the adoption of the $36,867, and state the percentage by which that effectively increases our taxes. So it's a little awkward, but the intent is to convey to the community and to taxpayers that the rate that we're levying, even though it's absolutely a lesser amount, will generate more real dollars than we had last year. So we are required to use this particular motion language. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have.
I see one trustee with a question at this point, Mr. Hibbs.
Ms. Powell, thank you for offering up an explanation for that, for the motion I'm about ready to read, because it sure is confusing. Dr. Reich and board members, I would like to offer up a motion to adopt the 2017 tax rate. So move that the property rate be increased by the adoption of a tax rate of $1.36867, which is effectively a 5.77% increase in the tax rate.
Thank you, Mr. Hibbs. That's a motion.
Second.
Second by Ms. Hudson. I don't see lights indicating further discussion. I actually do have a question before we vote, Ms. Powell. So that 5.77% increase in the tax rate, that's not just because, oh, we can get more money, right? I mean, we're not looking for a money grab. So can you go into some of the detail of why we're effectively getting the increase, besides what you very well put, well stated on the increasing gap between the inequity of our local property tax value increase burden versus the state share?
Sure. From one year to the next, as we all know and we experience with our own household budgets, there are inflationary pressures. In our case, as we open new programs, open new schools, grant employee salary increases from one year to the next, our costs do continue to go up. So in order for us to deliver the particular programs that we have committed to our community that we will provide, and in order for us to be competitive in our compensation to recruit and retain the best qualified staff, we have to make sure that we remain competitive. That comes at a cost, and we talked a lot about that when we adopted the budget. So yes, we are generating more dollars. You'll recall that we actually have a deficit budget. The operating deficit for us is $18.4 million. This additional revenue will help us reduce that deficit. We will still have a deficit, and again, it largely goes back to the way that state funding system works and the fact that, frankly, the state is a little short on meeting in its commitment to public ed.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that information and the further explanation of where we are in moving forward, especially the differences between us and a municipal governmental entity that also has a tax rate to adopt, because we are much different. I really appreciate the way you explained that. All right, I don't see any lights indicating further discussion, so we do have a motion on the table to accept this tax rate as stated by Mr. Hibbs. Please vote. All trustees present vote in the affirmative. We have a tax rate. Thank you. Next on our agenda is action item B, consider acceptance of trustee resignation. We are in receipt of the formal written resignation dated today from Mrs. Sullins. Look forward to a motion. Mr. Hogg?
Dr. Rice, I just figured we wouldn't make a motion and she had to stay. Can we do that? Is that allowed? Like she's not allowed to move?
Actually, by law, no, we have to accept.
Okay, I was just wondering.
Yes, that would be too easy.
Regrettably, I move to accept the resignation of Trustee Sullins.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Hogg, a second by Mr. Hibbs to accept the resignation. Seeing no lights indicating no discussion, please vote. Motion passes. Okay. Moving on, our next agenda items are discussion action items. The first one being the Board of Trustees Handbook. Mr. Hogg.
Thank you, Dr. Reich. With the extended special session, the governance committee is reviewing this, and we will send this out to the entire board for review, to review any updates we need to make to the Board of Trustee Handbook. We will put that on a future agenda probably later in September, maybe early October is probably a time frame of when we'd be hoping to make this annual update to our Board of Trustee Handbook. So with that, I would table it till a future meeting, late September, early October is probably our time frame.
Okay, very good. Seeing no lights from trustees for questions, we will accept that as it is a discussion action. No action needs to be taken. Next on the agenda is items to be withdrawn from the consent agenda. Are there any items to be withdrawn? Oh, I checked it and I kept on going. Oops, sorry. Let's back up. Discussion action item B, consideration of filling trustee vacancy. We will move that to the bottom of the agenda. We will confer in closed session according to Government Code sections 551.071, 551.074, and then come back out. So we'll defer and move on. Thanks for catching that. Next, now, items to be withdrawn from the consent agenda. Any items to be withdrawn from the consent agenda? Okay. Seeing none, we'll be considering the items on the consent agenda. Ms. Powell, can you please share bids with us?
President Reich, board members, Dr. Cavazos, we have two bids on the agenda this evening. In both cases, administration is recommending the low bids and the bids that represent the best value to the district.
Thank you. I would be interested in entertaining a motion.
I move we approve the consent agenda items.
Second.
Motion from Ms. Walton, second by Ms. Hudson to accept the consent agenda. No lights indicating discussion. Please vote. All trustees present vote in the affirmative. Thank you. Next on our agenda are discussion items. The first up is the legislative update. Mr. Superintendent.
Thank you, President Reich. And this evening we have the exceptional David Anderson to present a legislative update. And we have had a lot going on and a special session. So, David, welcome. And we look forward to your presentation.
Thank you.
And we may just call you the exceptional.
Thank you. There are a lot of David Andersons running around Austin these days. Dr. Rice, thank you. Dr. Cavazos, trustees. We put together a PowerPoint for you, and I don't intend to spend a lot of time on every slide because if we did, we'd have you here well into Friday, and I don't think anyone wants to do that. But I hope that as your time permits, you'll have a chance to look at that, and I'd like to move very quickly through some of these and really spend the bulk of the 3 or 4 minutes or 5 minutes on the special session. So if you'll indulge me, I will tell you that your objectives this session, of course, address local control issues, instructional programs that reflect and complement provisions of House Bill 5 from the last session, and suitable funding and relief from unfunded mandates. So when you look at what happened in the regular, I made a list of several of these that I thought were particularly pertinent for us, and as you'll see, the graduation review process, which was so important, passed in 2015, has been extended for the class of 18 and 19. The minutes of instruction, a concern that we had regarding the flexibility that you had, would it be extended to all programs? It was. Special ed classroom cameras, the mandate relief, that did pass. We're still hopeful that we'll see some additional funding from TEA as they sweep the foundation program per the requirements that were passed with that in 2015. Mandate relief with the ethics filing for vendors also passed. And the one that I did want to note, districts of innovation modifications, that failed. And had that passed, that would have been the absolute opposite of what you want with the flexibility for local schools. So the flexibility with the school calendar and the start date remained in place because of the action by the legislature. I did put together a list of a number of the recurring education topics for you. The one thing I did want to point out is that in that category of efficiency requirements, and if you extend it on to transparency, single election date bond use, there were over 50 bills filed, all of which would have restricted your abilities to make decisions, and none of those passed in the regular session. When you look at some of the selected education topics that we spent time talking about during the session through the committee and through the administration, there were several that I did want to point out. I think it emphasizes once again that while we see significant work done to pass legislation with bills such as House Bill 5, what we see most of the time is the public education community plays defense on ideas that would be perhaps troublesome to districts such as Arlington and others around the state. Voucher programs, including the regular voucher, the Nevada model that many people talked about, the special ed and the autism, none of those voucher programs were passed. Homeschool participation in UIL, which creates a very unlevel playing field for our academic and athletic competition, did not pass. The payroll deduction limitations did not pass. Limited election dates did not pass, and the suggestion that the Texas Education Agency needed a required position of Inspector General with subpoena authority did not pass. I did put asterisks by a couple of those, or several of them, because those were special session topics also. The instructional materials area, a lot happened in that. We're not going to spend a lot of time with it. If there are some questions about this, certainly be glad to get back with you, but I do want to say that because of several bills that passed this session, there is going to be a little different take on how the state and how local school districts may be able to identify and acquire instructional materials. And in some cases, I think there's some very positive wrinkles to this. In others, I have some concerns that I've shared with Dr. Cavazos and staff regarding limitations that may be placed on what you as elected officials and what the district may be able to do with materials. The State Board of Education did receive authority to reject materials on the grounds of suitability. They now can reject on the basis of not aligning with standards, not meeting manufacturing specs, and now are they suitable for the subject and grade. You'll see that I have a peer-reviewed tech plan because this was proposed in one of the bills. Once again, something that would have limited your authority. We were fortunate with that bill and were able to persuade the author to pull those requirements out of that bill. I will say too that for the first time since the Instructional Materials Fund was created, the legislature opted to reduce the amount of funding that was sent over by the State Board of Education. And we hope that that is a one-time occurrence and we don't see that as a trend. In your legislative agenda with regard to accountability, it should be a tool that helps local school boards and educators with performance. A number of bills passed, and I think that you'll see that individually and collectively, we see some positive things happening as a result of this session, particularly 463 that we mentioned earlier with individual graduation committees being extended, 2130 that asks for a study on the impact of state testing on special ed students. I did put in here some selected administration bills. The one thing that I want to mention as I pull these up is the student privacy. Texas is about 4 years behind most of the other states in the country with regard to statewide policy on student privacy. That was addressed in a bill that I would argue is a very, very positive piece of legislation in which stakeholders from all areas, trustees, administration, college prep services such as the College Board, college scholarship functions of the College Board, and the technology industry and the instructional materials world came together to craft a bill that people around the country are saying this really is state-of-the-art legislation that protects the privacy of students while not interfering with your ability to identify policies and practices that help improve student performance. I also mentioned the cybersecurity. Here we do have several cybersecurity bills that Texas Association of School Board will be providing some direction with regard to model policy. That's one that I would encourage you to take a look at very specifically. The sanctions bill is also there. Most significantly, it places some responsibility on the district for cyberbullying, for policies on cyberbullying for students on campus and off campus. The last one, my secretary helped me with that. It's not, that's not anything exceptional that I know how to do. We were very concerned with the nurse staffing notifications to districts over 10,000, which of course would be you, and several other districts. The governor vetoed that bill. The appropriations numbers, I think you're familiar with them. I did put these in here so you would have them. Where the Senate proposal was, where the House proposal was, usually they split the difference. In this case, they decided to lower both amounts when they came to the final budget. We have some observations about it. One that you heard from Ms. Powell a few minutes ago regarding rising property values. The key point is that the state of Texas will spend $3.2 billion less in this next budget because of the rising property tax values across the state of Texas. In essence, your taxpayers and the taxpayers in school districts all across the state are subsidizing the state as the state share goes down. And as Ms. Powell pointed out, we expect that to be at 37% based on Legislative Budget Board and controller projections by the time the next biennium ends. When I began my career 44 years ago as a fifth grade teacher in Austin, the state share was almost 70%. And the local share was right at 30%. And we've seen an almost complete flip of that in my short career. What I did want to take a few minutes with you about is the essay that all of your teachers will be working on here in the next couple weeks. Did I ponder sunsets, or was this 30 days, 20 things to do? So the question when the special session started was, which of the slick mottos will carry the day? On one side we had the group that said sunset and sine die, pass the sunset bill, which was the reason for being there, and go home. The other group, which was very much representative of the governor's position, I will have 20 items. I'd like to get all 20 passed. And of course now in hindsight we know that they did not sunset and sine die, nor did they go for 20 for 20. We ended up at a point somewhere in between. Governor Abbott did remind everyone that once the sunset bill passed out of the Senate, he would add to it, and he did. And we had several education items, including his desire to increase teacher pay by $1,000, and no increase in funding would be authorized. Direct quote from the governor, we need to not spend more, we need to spend smarter. It would be paid by you by reprioritizing funding. And again, from the governor, pay increases can be achieved by passing laws that reprioritize how schools spend money, which I would point out completely runs counter to your legislative agenda. And then administrative flexibility in teacher hiring and retention practices, that was an issue that came out. And I will say my hat was off to the statewide teacher organizations and their local affiliates for pointing out some of the false structure behind that proposal, and that you'll know that proposal went nowhere in the special session. Creating a school finance reform commission, the same as what was proposed in Senate Bill 2144 during the regular session. Special needs ESA, limiting the property taxes, and on down the list with the items that you're familiar with. We had adjournment sine die on the 29th day on Tuesday, one day ahead of time. And the only education bills that passed were House Bill 21, which was the finance bill, and its funding mechanism, House Bill 30, that basically created the method of finance to pay for that legislation. In a fascinating turn of events, the Senate passed the bill on Monday night. We expected the House to go to conference with it, but they were squeezed with time. Chairman Huberty on the House side worked very diligently to get some improvements in that bill, but ultimately was unable to do so. He reluctantly urged, and reluctantly was his word, not mine, urged the House to concur on Tuesday. The House did. They adjourned sine die shortly afterwards. The Senate opted not to take up the House version of the property tax bill, which would have put some caps on our local cities and other local taxing authorities, and they went home, adjourned sine die on Tuesday also. House Bill 21, I put the numbers up here for you. For TRS care, basically for those teachers who are retired and not quite 65, we have $212 million to help offset the cost for those retired educators. $150 million for the AISD districts, and I know we don't need to say it, but Arlington and none of your colleagues in the Texas School Alliance or AISD districts, there was no benefit for our large mid-urban and urban districts in that category. The EDA funding, Ms. Powell would be able to tell you if that has any implications for Arlington. It has very little for the large districts across the state. $60 million in charter facilities funding, and by the way, this is the first time in the 22-year history of charter schools that the state has provided direct facilities funding for charters. I happened to be around in 1995 when the charters were created. Dr. Cavazos was present with that action also. The commitment that the charter proposal, the charter community that supported that made was, we won't be asking for facilities funding. A lot happens in 22 years, and now they're going to get this. I would point out too that because of the wording of this legislation, this $60 million is in fiscal year 19, which means in the next biennium we'll be looking at $60 million for charters in each of the 2 years. So it will double to $120 million. We hope the legislature will look at that, that same multiplication factor when they look at the funding for EDA and IFA for ISDs as well. $41 million for small school adjustment, which you're not eligible for, and then $20 million for an autism grant, $20 million for a dyslexia grant that we will really not know anything about until the 18-19 school year, and then the interim school finance commission. So, Governor Abbott, I'm satisfied that 10 items I put on the special session agenda did get passed, but I'm disappointed that some very important ones did not get passed. Austin Senator Kirk Watson, best we can say is it could have been worse. And I would point out that success is in the eye of the beholder. And this special session was the most unique one. In conversations with several of you, you were asked about what could we have done differently, what did we not do. I will tell you that in my almost 15 years at Hillco and 6 years at the Education Agency, I've never seen a legislative special session in which the participants outside of the two chambers had less of an impact on things. This was very much a circumstance in which we relied and trusted on the members in the two chambers to do the right thing and address school finance. We leave 29 days later with no additional funding in the basic allotment and really no funding that provides any direct help for Arlington ISD or any of your large mid-urban or urban brethren. So there is your quick run through the legislative session, pardon me, the 85th, and the first special session of the 85th. Be glad to answer any questions.
Let's see. Thank you very much for the presentation, Mr. Anderson. Mr. Hogg.
Yeah, thank you, President Reich. And Mr. Anderson, thank you so much from all the work we've done with you this year, and especially to my colleagues who served on the governance committee with us, who serve as kind of the de facto monitor the craziness of the legislature. I thank you, Dr. Reich and Ms. Hudson, for all the work, and all the rest of my colleagues. Thank you for all the help and support. It's as you can see, it's very, as everyone out there knows, it's very confusing.
Yes.
The legislature is designed to not pass bills, and that is a great thing because those 181 folks down there are some interesting cats to say the least. Good people in general, but when they get together, I think we all lose our mind a little bit. You know, Mr. Anderson, as the board worked, and we started this process a long time ago to make it through this session. We started an interim legislative agenda that we created, and we had our legislative agenda. I thank my colleagues that were able to travel down with the city of Arlington and to that faction. Those that traveled down to specifically have targets. Watching Ms. Hudson almost want to jump across a desk with one of our legislatures. When, I think we were all shocked, and my comment was, "That's an interesting comment. Thank you." It's, you know, to having the opportunity to go down a couple of times and testify. I thank all of our colleagues for our work. You know, as Mr. Anderson said, with GRAG committees, we had some good wins. We had some relief from some mandates. We had some things they didn't meddle with. You saw we didn't get much impact from school finance. The school finance does help our TRS care, which there was a huge donut hole gap for our pre-65 retirees. We have teachers who are ready to retire, and there's nothing harder than a teacher who wants to retire, they're ready to retire, because teaching's a tough profession, and they can't because TRS care is so terrible. So hopefully we had a fix with that. They provided more funding, and I do think it's, Ms. Walton, I'm never going to say it's good insurance they're providing, but it's at least a little manageable for our retirees, because it was unlivable on their wages for the retirement. There was no incentive for those teachers that were ready to retire to be able to retire from that perspective. But as you can see, we almost got no relief from school finance from those perspectives, from where we're tackling and what we're going through as a district. We had zero relief on TRS active care, which is a major issue, one of our main items. We were looking to hope and tackle, because I would tell you our health insurance is at pretty much unlivable wages. The state's barely meeting the minimum standard by federal government, and it is let's just say a poorly run plan that I'm pretty disappointed in of what we're able to offer our teachers as far as insurance. The state loves to give out grades, and so as we talked to Ms. Anderson, what are our grades for what we've done overall? You know, we're probably in the A range as a whole. If you start thinking of offense and defense, I'd rather have good defense in the legislature than good offense. We did really well with a good A in offense, and we probably are a low B A on defense, and then probably a low B on offense. We didn't get some of the things passed we needed to get that tackled. But let me tell you, just our board and the community, we took an aggressive approach. We had over 200 opinions on behalf of this district on bills. Bills can change at the drop of a moment. I have to thank Ms. Powell, Mr. Kale, Ms. Johnston, all the rest of the staff, Dr. Cavazos, who many late nights were producing letters, producing statements on behalf of the district of what we were sending out to get them down to Mr. Anderson to be able to distribute them to our legislatures. We had a very strong presence in the legislature this session on Arlington. Legislators knew we were going to have an opinion. They knew we would give insight. We didn't always agree with all the other districts around the state, and I think that's really says something about where we stand, and we stuck true to our legislative agenda. There's only a couple items that truly weren't our legislative agenda, as we always, when we build those agendas, we say we're never going to tackle everything. We're never going to know, because who knows what they may come up with on those agendas. But we had most items covered on that. But with over 200 items of opinions from where we tackled and what we did, I think I could say, honestly, we had a successful legislative session with probably one of the most frustrating legislative sessions. I told them, I said, boy, that special session, I don't think I wanted anything to do with that special session. I think everyone was just a little tired. And
Neither did I.
And I think the legislators were tired. I think everyone was tired from what was happening. And so I think just overall to this board, I think we had a successful year. It can always be more successful from where we're tackling. But I just thank Ms. Anderson and his entire staff and team down in Austin, and all the folks here that were able to either post on Facebook, social media, send notes, make some phone calls, or just have the discussions with other community members of what what's happening in the legislature. So I just wanted to give an overview kind of from a board's perspective.
Thank you. When we got together in February, 1st February, you recall at the time I said that the current economic circumstances were such that if we were back together in June, and here we are in August, and we saw that the legislature funded current law funding formulas plus enrollment growth and helped improve some of the programs with additional funding around the edges, that would be a successful session, and that's what we had. We do see more money coming in because of enrollment growth. I appreciate your comments about the Hillco team. We have, I think, a very strong team. I will tell you, though, that without the folks at the tables behind you and the great work of the governance committee, we would not be able to do this. The other part of that equation is the legislators. And in your case, I do want to tell you that I felt welcome, and I felt that the letters and the positions that you were taking, that that your delegation, particularly on the Senate side, Kelly Hancock and Brian Birdwell, their offices were always open to me to come in on your behalf. Their staff, Senator Birdwell's chief of staff in particular, was someone who wanted to know where you were. And I would see him in the hall, and Ben would say, "Where's Arlington on this? What is the school trustees? What do they think about this?" And so that's important. And all of your House members, the members themselves and their chiefs and the people who worked on the education policy were very welcoming and, again, wanted to know. I never ran into a situation in which we felt stiff-armed in any of the House offices when we were there on your behalf with your delegation. And I appreciated that, because there are other districts that do not have that circumstance. And while we know with any delegation in a large urban or mid-urban district, there will be disagreement at times, and there was with the delegation, within the delegation and with your positions at times. There was a professional and open attitude, and that makes the work I do on your behalf, the potential to be productive is much greater. And I appreciated them for that, and I appreciate all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. And also, just to give this board an idea, I don't know if there's other questions or not. What's our next steps?
Well,
recover
yes.
First is the first one.
Mm-hmm.
No rest, because now we get to monitor what TEA is going to actually put into law. How it gets implemented is a critical factor. But from this board, the good thing about the legislature, I love how they call them part-time legislators, which is a good thing, because
Yes.
if they were down there the whole year, it'd be nerve-wracking. But when they're back, it's probably more critical, the work we do in the interim than during session. We've done a good job. We did an interim set legislative agenda last time, and I would tell this board we will probably start that discussion late in the fall for what we need to tackle, what we didn't get, because we have identified items we did not receive, and things we think we could have an attack for, things we need to approach again, and do that late in the fall, and then probably have an interim agenda sometime in March timeframe, March or April, and work that time frame for those next 6 months before this whole game starts up again in 2019.
Well, I think that timeline is perfect. You did mention one thing that I would like to underscore. There is another part of the process, and that's the development of administrative code rules by the Commissioner and by the State Board of Education. And our recommendation from Hillco is, and we're doing this internally, but our recommendation to you is that that you need to recognize the administrative code rulemaking in some of these cases is really as important for us now as the actual legislation. And our plan is to restructure our support staff in a way so that we are watching the posting of the administrative code rules in the Texas Register, and TEA does a great job of sending out the notices about that. But we intend to watch that and stay in touch with you through your administrative staff about any of those proposed administrative code rules, again, from the State Board or the Commissioner, that warrant attention consistent with your legislative agenda. So thank you for mentioning that. I neglected to say that earlier.
It's a good point, Mr. Anderson.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Hogg. Ms. Walton.
Thank you, President Reich. Mr. Anderson, this may be a stupid question, but I have been wondering throughout session and special session, why, in particular the Senate, but in the whole governance group down there, why are they so opposed to tapping into the rainy day fund? to help education. I mean, that's what it was put there for.
Well, the Rainy Day Fund, Economic Stabilization Fund, was created to help stabilize uncertain times in the state, uncertain economic times, and certainly we have that right now with regard to oil prices and some of the other sources of revenue around the state. There are some observers, Ms. Walton, who see that the Rainy Day Fund has become almost a sacred totem that we want to talk about, we want to pay homage to, but we're not ready to use. And one of the analogies that I've heard some House members use is the old parent with the savings account, and you have a child who's ready to go to college, and you have $100,000 in your savings account, and you're not going to use any of that to invest in the child's opportunity to help improve their circumstances. Instead, you'll sit on that. It's puzzling. It's troublesome because that is Texans' money that should be used to help address some of the issues in Texas. And I do understand the concern about doing anything other than one-time expenses, but we do have some circumstances, particularly with regard to TRS active care, that a one-time fix would be very helpful with. So I wish I had an answer for you. I really don't. If I did have an answer for that, I think that I'd have people beating down the door to say, help us figure this out. So it's a good question. It's a very good question.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Walton. I believe what you're describing here is essentially ideology taking over, interfering with policy. Yeah, don't see in the near future how that's going to adjust. I know that as you mentioned, we're at the beginning of the rules making process. With that said, do you have a thought or an idea with the charter facilities funding, what that potentially can look like as far as application, distribution, brand new operators versus existing operators? Have you heard anything at all about that?
No, we really don't. We
Okay.
do know that the Senate put some additional language in earlier in the week with regard to the charter facilities, that it was contended at the time that that would be a further safety check so that those funds would be spent on facilities. Charters have been shouldering the facilities cost for 22 years, and so in essence here is $60 million that can be used to expand what they're doing already, or possibly even to replace what they're doing already. So we really don't.
Okay.
It is something that I'm very interested in, and I think people who are sitting in your chairs in districts all across the state are also. So we will be watching and reporting back to Dr. Cavazos to report to you what we're seeing with that.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you for the overview. I appreciate everything that you do and your team does down there.
Thank you.
For us, with us, and I think we're all better for it. Thank you, Mr. Hogg, for providing the overview, the next steps. We are an active group. We will continue to engage our community and continue the delicate dance that it is.
Yeah.
Please know that all of my colleagues at Hilco join me in saying that we are very proud to be the legislative consultant to Arlington ISD and the trustees. Your standing means a lot, and for us to be able to represent you says a lot about us, and we appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I was just thinking, now that we have the Sullins in Austin, we all have a place to stay. We can just live down there when we need to.
And maybe a new state representative for Austin area. Okay. Well, moving on, our agenda discussion items. The next is the Studer Group report on the 16-17 results of the Parent Satisfaction Survey, the Employment Engagement Survey, and the District Services Survey. Dr. Cavazos.
Thank you, President Rice. And as you're aware, we have a number of surveys that we do to gauge our employee engagement and our parent satisfaction and our district services. And so this time of year, we bring the results of those surveys. We also have Dr. Barlow, who will be helping with this presentation at some point, also with the qualitative part. So welcome.
Robin.
Thank you. Thank you. Good evening, President Reich, members of the board, and Dr. Cavazos. As I was creating this presentation, it was to focus on the 2016-17 results, but I had the great opportunity then to reflect a bit, and our work and our partnership with Arlington ISD began in 2013. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a look back as we start, and I think it'll reinforce much of what you heard about the caliber of work that is occurring in Arlington. And I really appreciated Ms. Sullins talking about the knee, I think, at the knee, but ready to go to greater heights. So I think you'll see that tonight. Lots to celebrate. So when we started in 2013, this was our core team. It's me, I'm the practitioner, Dr. Pilcher, and she is measurement and evaluation. She's what we call the psychometrician, which has all sorts of connotations, I think. And then Dr. Kunselman, who works in research and development, and her focus really is on organizational development. So the three of us started with you, and we have continued with you. And it's been a great experience for all of us. So I just want to take a moment to thank you for that opportunity. The purpose of our surveys is really to gather information for leaders to use to improve the work environment, to improve customer care, customer service, both internal and external. Our surveys are fairly short, very Gallup-like. The whole intent is to get the most information from the most stakeholders. But as part of that process, it's how do we use the data to improve, and then how do we consistently monitor it, what we're doing to ensure improvement. So that's just sort of an overview of the process. We do reliability studies to ensure that our surveys are consistent and reliable. We completed those studies again in 2017. Any overall reliability above a 0.9 is considered excellent. So for our employee engagement, it's a 0.96, parent satisfaction 0.98, and district services 0.99. So all give you assurance that it's consistent and reliable data. We're measuring what we intend to measure. So I want to share with you the employee engagement results. So in looking at this chart, you can see that in 2013, where the district mean was, and then in March of 2017, where we ended this cycle. And interesting, 2013 was the highest until this year. And you'll see that there was marked increase from March of 2016 to March of 2017, a 0.10, which is a significant increase. The highest ranked items were my principal supervisor provides me with good processes and resources to do my job. My principal supervisor demonstrates a genuine concern for my welfare and then sets clear expectations to judge my performance. So in 2017, these were the highest, but what about over time? So when we look at the first one, provides good processes and resources to do my job. As we said, 2013 was the highest, and then it sort of fluctuated, but you'll notice that the 2017 is a definite increase from 16, but also over 2013. So there's been definite improvement. And then my principal supervisor demonstrates genuine concern, 3.86 when we began in 2013, and this year at a 3.91. And from 16 to 17, you'll see also an impressive increase. My supervisor sets clear expectations to judge my performance, started at a 3.88, fluctuated, but ended in March of 2017 at a 3.90, and that's a 0.10 increase from 2016. Then the lowest ranked items and I think you'll find this interesting because even though they're the lowest ranked, there was improvement. So consults me on decisions that affect my job, provides feedback on my strengths as an employee, and provides support needed to accomplish my work objectives. So the first one, the lowest ranked item, consults me on the decisions that affect my job, is about the same as it was in 2013, but there was a definite increase from March of 2016. Provides feedback on my strengths as an employee, an increase from 13, and a definite increase from 2016. And then provides support needed to accomplish my work objectives, an increase from 2013, and a 0.09 increase from 2016. So even though these were the lowest ranked items, there was improvement, hitting that knee, I think. So summary points, we would say, the overall mean increased over the past 2 years by 0.10. Most important, the percentage of responses in strongly agree and agree increased, which meant you had more people moving to that positive side. The means for every item increased from 16 to 17. That included all the leader items, the superintendent items, and the likely to recommend item. This year's results are about the same as 2013, which was your highest. So again, it's that knee. I thought that was most appropriate to talk about. So overall, employee engagement took a positive movement in March of 2017. We do comments, open-ended comments, what's working well, what could be improved. And Dr. Barlow is going to talk more extensively about that. But the themes that we saw from the comments, the positives or the what is working well, dedication to student success, and I think you heard a lot of that this evening, support for implementation of curriculum and instruction initiatives, technology, and extended opportunities for students. All of those things very important to you as a board, as we've heard this evening. Areas that could be improved: student discipline, communication between and among departments, communication from administrators to staff and faculty, and salaries and benefits. Parent satisfaction. This is pretty amazing. So when I share this, I really want you to look at this. So we began the parent satisfaction survey in 2013. This is done annually. And you can see that there's been an increase in participation each year. And also the overall mean has consistently increased. This year being the highest with a 4.40 out of a 5.0, which is pretty amazing. The highest ranked items, and I want you to look at these. Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I'm getting some indications that maybe there are questions to be asked on the previous section.
Okay.
Maybe break it up that way.
I'd be happy to do that.
Okay. Yes. Yeah, Dr. Barlow does have some additional information on each section, so on the employee. So you can certainly ask questions or wait to hear what Dr. Barlow has to say also to take that section. I'm flexible, whichever you want. Okay.
It's a quick question.
Okay, sure. Go ahead, Ms. Walt.
Thank you, President Reich. Back on the overall, the results, I think it's the one
On the employee engagement?
right after the title, that one right
Yes.
there. Why the drop in numbers of participation by almost 500 between last year and this year? And how did that impact the results? And was Dr. Barlow going to talk about that? Or, I mean, should I wait for that answer from when you have your turn?
We don't know why there were fewer participants. The same process was followed this year, which is an email invitation out to all employees to participate. We also do paper surveys for those employees that prefer to do it that way. So it was done at the same time that it was done the previous year. There was a marked increase in the results. Whether that was because those 500 were going to mark it in a different way, I don't know. I don't know that.
Thank you.
But with that, wouldn't you consider 5,500 out of 8,500 employees
It's a great return, always. And, yes.
Okay. Let's proceed on, unless, go ahead.
I have a question on that. I know that in years past, we actually had, we didn't have any type of systems in place to determine if people were taking the survey more than once. Did we put any safeguards in, or?
We did not do identifiers,
Okay.
which was the proposal that we would do identifiers. And I think the district wanted to be certain that everybody had an opportunity to complete and didn't feel that there was a trust or transparency issue. Dr.
Okay.
Cavazos, is that?
You want me to? So that's the next phase of this, is the next time we do surveys, that's a whole different discussion, but the identifiers will be part of the next survey administration. Because we're wrapping up this administration with Studer, we felt it necessary for comparison purposes and otherwise to be consistent, knowing that we're going to switch the way we do surveys beginning this year.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Hudson?
Thank you, President Reich. Just one quick additional question. Our percentages completed in Spanish seems to fluctuate some. Do we send out the requests in Spanish
Yes.
as well?
Yes.
Is it
and the
all in the
surveys
same,
in Spanish?
or-
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Do we send it out in any other languages, or is it just English and Spanish?
Just English and Spanish.
Thank you.
Mhm.
All right, I don't see any other lights. Please continue. Thank you.
Okay. All right, we're going to move to the parent satisfaction survey, and this is the survey that is given annually. And all parents and caregivers are invited to participate for each school in which they have a child in attendance. And so you can see here the participation increased, and also over time, the district mean increased, and to a high point of 4.40 for March of 2017. The highest ranked items, and I think this is really important, each one of these was above a 4.5. That is pretty amazing. And there were actually 4 in that range. And I think the first one probably is most important. My family is treated with respect at this school. The second one speaks to your operations area, maintenance and custodial. The school is clean and well-maintained. My child has the necessary classroom supplies and equipment for effective learning, and my child's learning is a high priority at this school. So these were high, but over time, what did it look like? And again, my family is treated with respect. It's consistently increasing to that high of 4.56. The school is clean and well-maintained. Again, it's that consistent movement up. Necessary classroom supplies and resources, and again, the trajectory is up. And then my child's learning is a high priority. And you can see again that movement up consistently. And that's very impressive. So the lowest ranked items, and I want to point out again, the lowest ranked, they're all still above a 4.0, but they're the lowest ranked. But as we look at them over time, you'll see the growth that has occurred. So rules and discipline are enforced consistently. I regularly receive feedback from school staff on how well my child is learning. I receive positive phone calls, notes, and/or emails about my child from school. So those were the low. But this first one, school rules and discipline, is consistent. And you'll notice that in 2013, it was a 4.18, but we ended with a 4.35. It's great, great movement. And then regularly receive feedback about my child's learning. Started at a 3.98, and in 2017 was a 4.24. And then I received positive phone calls, emails, or notes home. Started 3.79 and ended at a 4.17. So even though they're low, and as Ms. Sullins said, that continuous improvement's in our bones, so we do want to improve, but that's what we've done. So it's very impressive. So what do we know? We do something called top box, which is that strongly agree rating. So in 2013, the percent of strongly agree was 49.9, and in March of 2017, it was 58.4. That is significant increase. And that's that in business is called top box loyalty. That's that they're going to be with you, even if you make a little jitterbug step. And then parents choosing the bottom box decreased from a 3.0 in the baseline survey to a 1.7 in March of 2017. Themes from the comments from parents, they too talked about teacher dedication, positive learning environments, strong academic programs. They expressed some areas that might need focus, improved communication with parents, and generally this was around more than just announcements about activities or school pictures or that sort of thing, but more in-depth communication. Student discipline and bullying, and then rigor and relevance of math, science, and reading curriculum. There are two items on the employee engagement and the parent that I would like to pull out for you as well. We call these the likely to recommend. And again, it's that look at top box. So in the parents, the question is, or the item is, I would recommend this school to other parents. This moved from a 4.46 to a 4.55. That is really, really terrific and something to be celebrated and talked about, I think, with your community. On the employee engagement, the item is, if given a choice, I would recommend that a parent select this district for his or her child. The high point, again, was in 2013 with a 3.68, but there was a significant increase from 2016 to 2017. So we see that movement beginning back up, which is where it should be. So the summary for the parent and the recommended question, your parent, the highest overall, and likely to recommend, again, your parent is the highest it's ever been, and for employees, we're seeing that upturn, which is what you want. Questions?
Trustees with questions? Mr. Hogg.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Reich. I love your comment on the top box. Would you relate that in the corporate environment to Net Promoter Score?
It's, yes, the
Same
Net
concept.
Promoter Score, yep.
And just for my colleagues, if you're not familiar with Net Promoter, it's probably one that's commonly used, what companies use. You look at a Southwest Airlines and they
Yes.
have giant Net Promoter Score. USAA, LL Bean, used to be FedEx, dropped a little bit. And then you see some of our other airlines that are a little lower and some of those, and it's literally asked one question is,
Right.
would you refer?
Yep. Recommend.
Recommend this company. And so I think it's called a Net Promoter Score. And it's probably the most, I would say, the most commonly used corporate tracking device that was created by Bain many, many years ago, which is a pretty good indicator as a whole of your clients.
Right.
And that's more about what your clients are thinking of you as a corporation. So I would consider that top box. So I appreciate you bringing that up. And I think those are, I would say in future years, that top box needs to be a key factor we're judging on. Everything needs to be judged, but that one key factor is truly a driver of indication. You can track a lot of things, but one thing can be a particular focus. I think that's it.
And that really is the loyalty that your stakeholders have to you. And it's with that net promoter score is, again, you can make a little mistake, but they're still likely to be with you because you've built up that relationship.
It's also probably the hardest to move.
Exactly. I would say too, I think in light of the political climate that we're in with education, that's why we're beginning to talk about that more. It really is critical for all of us,
Sure, thank you. Ms. Hudson.
Thank you so much for your presentation. I do want to concur with Mr. Hogg on the top box results. Kudos to the staff, particularly in the schools, the teachers.
Yes.
I think that's very, very reflective of the work that we're doing to build relationships with our communities, with our parents. And that's just really, really encouraging to see. That said, I know in the corporate world, usually you're aiming for over 90%,
Yes,
right?
yes.
So I think we ask usually fewer questions in the corporate world, so that might be, you know, something that's to be taken into account, but I would like to continue to see that trend in our district. A couple of questions. On the parental survey, is administration able to see those results at a campus level?
Yes.
Okay, good. And do we or will we collect data regarding parental and student subgroups, race, socioeconomics, ethnicity, religion, to see if we're adequately serving? It's a hugely diverse district, and if we're not serving any subset of those people adequately, that's something that I think we really ought to know and be able to focus on. Are we able to do that currently?
We don't do that. The only thing we pull out is the non-English speaking surveys that are completed.
I will add that the next phase of this is to have identifiers for parents as well. And we're in discussion with the development now for this year to have identifiers for schools, grades, all different things that we collect in terms of demographics.
I think that was it from me. I
Okay,
appreciate
good.
it. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I have just one more to share. I'm sorry, did you? Okay. I have one more survey to share, and that's the district services, and this is the internal customer survey. This is completed by principals and assistant principals and assesses the quality of service they receive from district departments. And again, it's that upward trend that you'll see here. We use 5 quality characteristics to determine that quality of service. Accessibility, can they reach a real person? Accuracy, do you get what you ask for, or is there communication about a substitution? Attitude, service with a smile, obviously. Operations is that day-to-day feeling that this particular department works in an efficient and effective way and as a team. And then timeliness, do I get what I asked for when you said I would? So those are the 5 that we look at. And you can see since October of 2014 to April of 2017, there has been an increase, and a significant increase, from the November 2016 to the April 2017. All of the quality characteristics were above a 4.0, and the district mean was the highest yet, which was a 4.14. So really, really excellent work. The participation this past year trended up from prior years, and I just want to say of significance, there were many positive and very specific positive comments about the Human Resource Department, and I know that's been an area of work for the district. So just in my presentation, my reflection on your results, Arlington Independent School District lives their mission and their values. And this is through the care you give to your internal and external customers. So I commend you for that. And I thought of this saying from an old L.L. Bean poster about customers, and educators don't like that term customers, but we have them. And I just think it's appropriate for the positioning that Arlington takes in their care of customers. And that is that we appreciate the opportunity to serve each customer. So I leave you with that.
Thank you.
Questions?
Yes, I do see some lights. Ms. Walton.
Thank you, President Reich. I just want to make one observation that on the themes from the comments, both for teachers and for parents, 2 words appear on both of them, and that's discipline and communication.
Yes.
And those are 2 things I guess we need to look at a little harder and work a little harder on.
And I think both of those things are like this big, right?
Oh, huge, yeah.
So it's figuring out what is it that we really need to work on, and that's part of that rollout. Thank you for saying that.
Mr. Hibbs.
I really appreciate your presentation. I appreciate what this student group brings, and especially the way that we've been able to, at this point, have what is almost 5 years of tracking.
Yeah.
To be able to look back and see that timeline, and we know that there's when there's challenges when we put in a new curriculum programming, when we add different aspects of the bond that may be adding students to one campus for a STEM academy and such. There could be a lot of disruption on different campuses. What I really appreciated about these surveys is the sheer number of people that have taken them.
Yeah.
Because unfortunately, sometimes the people we hear the loudest
Right.
are the smallest percentage.
Correct.
And when you have these numbers of individuals that have rated us at the level that it has been, it's a testament that there are people that are excited about what they're doing. Our teachers, I believe, they're the best of the best, and I believe that 99.9% of them are, love the district that they work for, and I think they were showing that in this report, and then to have the confidence from our parents,
Yes.
and seeing that moved up, I'm really pleasantly surprised, or not surprised, but pleased by the movement that's been taken here, and I think that it's a lesson for all of us to understand that we are providing in so many different ways exceptional opportunities for these kids and for our teachers and staff, because in the way that they read that. Do we have opportunities? Absolutely, to improve, but you always strive for that 5.
Absolutely.
And so I just appreciate the positive note that I see that came out of this, because it's not always that way.
Right.
And I think that in our messaging, we need to reflect that back to our community, our stakeholders, our teachers, so that they can be able to celebrate the gains that were taken there. Because when parents are talking about, are my children are respected and taken care of, they're talking about the teachers and the administrators on that campus. So again, thank you very much for the efforts and time that y'all put into with us. I'm glad that we've had this opportunity to partner for as many years as we can, because truly right now I think it's evident of the gains that we had always hoped that we could make is starting to show themselves.
Absolutely. And thank you again for the opportunity to be a partner in the journey. It's been a great one. Thank you.
There's more
sorry.
questions. Ms. Hudson.
Thank you, President Reich. Just one more from me. In the comments, student discipline / bullying, was there anything in those comments to help us discern, is that bullying that's going on at the campuses, or is that happening online? Do we have any?
There really is not a lot of description around bullying. So I do want to say, because we do so many of these parent surveys, bullying surfaces about every 2 years and then goes back down. And I think it has a lot to do with how we define it. And I think we have to help folks define what bullying is. And as you say, investigate, are we talking about online bullying or really bullying in the hallways? So that's the question.
Both of which I think would need to be
Equally,
addressed, but clearly in very different approaches.
Right.
So I think really narrowing that down may help staff and administration and teachers in the classroom sort of tailor a solution to that. I know just as a parent reading about, students on their phones nowadays and the decline in mental health of our teenagers, I just think it's a really, really important topic. So I didn't want to let that go without asking a question about it. So whether we can find out about it through this survey or other means, I think it's definitely a subject that is worthy of diving into.
Yeah, and part of that rollout is having those continuous conversations, and so that's really where you develop that richness of solution.
Thank you.
Mr. Hogg.
Thank you, Dr. Reich. Good question about bullying, Ms. Hudson. I think it's, you look at it, I think it's gone down in the hallways, but increased on the cyber side, which is sometimes probably even nastier than the day most of us grew up. The bully in the schools can hide behind a keyboard this day and age. There's more of them. Let me ask Dr. Cavazos one question on this. The question was asked of each campus receives these. How do these relate back into principal scores and campus evaluations?
So that's the second part of the presentation.
Never mind that.
Good thinking, though, there, Mr. Hogg. Thank you for the work. The journey has been quite remarkable, remembering back to when we first started discussing this back then, and then now to look and be able to have years of trend data and to see the vast majority of the trend lines going up. That's phenomenal.
You should be really proud, really proud.
It's a great team in this district, for sure, everybody. So one of the questions that I think people have outside of this room, I think we all understand, is you did a great job back then explaining what the metrics look like and the difference, say, between why a 4.1 versus a 4.3. We were like, oh, wow, that's great. Can you remind us what that looks like, and also in the communication to the individual stakeholders, the respondents, or the respondent categories, why what they may perceive as just a very subtle change is actually a significant change.
Significant. Yeah, so we would say, it depends on the item a good bit, but if you have a 0.05 to a 0.10 change, that is a significant change and a very good upward trend. That's why we were so pleased to see those on your employee engagement, because it was consistently in that range. So really, really good. I do think, and we have played a lot with that 3 or neutral or mixed feelings or whatever you call it. But because your net promoter is going up, what we know is that group is decreasing, which is really what you want. That's the group you're trying to move up. Right. Is that helpful?
Yes, very much so. Thank you.
Well,
I don't see any other lights indicating questions for this part. Don't go too far. There might be some. Okay. But I guess up next we have the qualitative analysis part, correct? From Dr. Barlow. So please come on down and talk to us about all of those comments.
I'll just add some comments before Dr. Barlow starts. There's 2 pieces to this, as you know, and just for everybody's understanding. There's the quantitative, which is what we just went over, And then there's the comments. And on the employee engagement survey in particular, we receive a lot of comments, which is very, very good because it's another communication tool. But we know that that's a whole different analysis that has to be done on that. It's a qualitative analysis with categories and themes. So Dr. Barlow and his team, I want to commend him ahead of time because qualitative work is much different. Let me just put it that way. They're both complicated, but it's different. And so a comment or two comments and how significant you bundle those and themes is really extensive work. And Dr. Barlow and his team they've done a great job because we challenged them to say, of all these comments, hundreds of pages of comments, right, Dr.
Yes.
Barlow? Make some sense out of it for the district. So it's another piece of that information that I think is really important in the continuous improvement. So Dr. Barlow is going to now take us through a qualitative analysis.
All right, thank you. Thank you for having a few minutes for me to present the qualitative piece this evening. So Dr. Reich, members of the board, and Dr. Cavazos. And maybe before I actually get into this, maybe a couple of comments on the quantitative piece. We were talking about sample sizes a while ago. So maybe to put that in perspective, a very well done scientific randomized survey usually shoots for about maybe 1,100 or 1,200 respondents. And so you may have noticed that we were like in the 5,000s, depending on which one it was. We were like in the 5,000, 6,000. I think even the one of them had the 8,000. So we have very, very large samples there, getting very nice response rates there. So maybe just to put that in perspective. And then, Ms. Hudson, just a quick comment. We do have some additional information coming back with our student survey that might give a little bit more information on the bullying, breaks it down a little bit more. So we may see that here in a few weeks. So just a couple of comments there. So, okay, so this is the same survey. It's just the comment section. And as Dr. Cavazos indicated, there's probably 400 or 500 pages worth of comments. And so that's a qualitative, what we would call the qualitative piece of that, and trying to go through and try to understand and try to bring some sort of meaning to that. So that's what this part of the presentation is going to be about. So maybe just a quick explanation or definition of the difference between quantitative and qualitative. From my point of view, the way I look at the differences, a quantitative analysis is we're getting very objective, very large sample sizes of some sort with some sort of objective analysis where we're trying to understand what's happening. So I think I have an example up here. So maybe the example is we collect math scores from all fifth grade students, and after the analysis we can make some sort of general statement about the population of students taking fifth grade math, about maybe they have gaps in certain areas of math concepts. With respect to that, it requires conducting statistical analyses using various models. We have a lot of various ways to do that. When we get to the qualitative piece, really that tries to answer the question why. Okay, we've got some sort of understanding of what's happening. Now, why is that happening? So we get more into asking questions either through open-ended responses or through small group interviews, that type of thing. So you collect those statements and try to get a little bit better of understanding of why it's happening. The challenge with that is that when you do that, you have 400 or 500 pages worth of comments, depending on the size of the process and the size of the groups that you're working with. So the key there is that once you get all those comments, that we have to have some way to understand it, some way to kind of compact it down into some sort of way to have communication about it, and that requires this codifying process of the responses. So I'm going to give a couple of examples of what that looks like when we codify. I have 4 or 5 or maybe even 10 slides of that. I'm not going to read through all of them. I'll probably read through the first couple, then I'll kind of flip through the rest and kind of let you look at it if you have questions. So the first part of that, there's a question, one of the open-ended responses is, what is working well in the district? Okay, so we get hundreds of pages of comments on that. Then what we we started this process a couple of years ago. We've tried to keep with the same process and keep it consistent. But so the first time we went through them, what we did was we had staff that read through all the comments and then started trying to categorize or codify those comments into groups, and so or into labels of some sort. So an example of a label here would be this first one here: school administration, leadership, work, and/or salary benefits.
And then you see I've listed 3 examples here of comments that we've categorized into that. So the culture of our building cannot be matched. Our administration does a phenomenal job of creating a feeling of home where everyone, student, teacher, and all staff are valued, would not want to work anywhere else for anyone else. The second comment there, Carter Junior High administration, teachers, and support staff all work well together. Last one there, in this example, our new principal is working hard with us to help our students excel. So the idea there is you've got all these comments, you start reading through them, and then you start trying to come up with some sort of common theme or codification of those comments. So here's the codification, school administration, and then these are the comments. Now those aren't the only 3 that went in, that's just an example. So there may be 5 or 10 or hundreds or whatever. I'm going to do a couple more examples here. So this was our category 3, and this is actually on our chart coming up. So these are the same codifications that we'll see in just a minute. These are just examples. So district administration and leadership, you'll see 3 comments there. In general, the district runs decently. The plan or vision of the superintendent has for the district, always enjoying visiting with the superintendent during his individual campus visits. Another example here, community and our involvement and our parent involvement. You can see the comments there. Again, I'm going to not read the rest of these until I get to the second question, but I'll let you kind of scan through those, and I just have a couple more slides here on question number 1. Here's another category, teaching strategies and our teacher salaries and benefits. I have 3 comments there. Another one, school academic programs. So you see information about the GT program, getting students to be back on track for graduation. Wonderful dual language programs are off to a good start. And then another comment here, or another category here, reduction of non-instruction teacher activities in order to allow teachers more student instruction time. So then we move on to question number 2. The second question that's open-ended is, what areas in the district could be improved? So the process goes exactly the same way. You can see the categories there, and now you can see that maybe these are not what's working well, but there's what we might want to improve. So in our building, the administrators exhibit a lack of respect to the staff and inconsistent enforcement of rules and procedures. Or B, their ineffective administrator principal must either improve or be replaced. The last one there, leadership is lacking. It seems in many buildings, the trend is for our district to hire the same type of people as administrators. So these would be examples of that same category, but what might want to be improved with respect to the perception of our employees. So again, I'm not going to read through all of those now. I'm just going to kind of click through these. These next few slides are still related to question number 2, what areas in the district could be improved. Again, we had district administration and leadership. You can see the comments there. Community and our parent involvement, again, some comments. Teaching strategies and our teaching salary and benefits, again, some comments. And then school academic programs. So with respect to that codification, then we have these, we went through, once we had the codification, and went through and then counted all the comments that related back to those categories. So in this example, I'll go through the first slide in a little bit more detail, and then we'll flip through the next few slides. But so in this example, these were categories 1 through 6. I think we ended up with about 30 or 35 categories. So this is categories 1 through 6. You can see here the school administration, leadership, and our salaries and benefits. That's the exact same category that I showed you a while ago on a previous slide. Category 2, technology in the classroom and district-wide. Category 3, district administration and leadership. I think that was another example that I had. But the idea here is that those comments or those categories are the same categories as I used for examples earlier. Once we have the categories, then we'll go back through and we try to count how many comments are related to that. So looking at number 1, school administration, you can see there that in January of 2015, that's kind of our trial run that we did this, that we had 80 comments with respect to school administration that were working well, and we had 20 comments that we felt like, or the employees felt like needed to be improved. So that gave us 100 comments overall. And so when I just do the percentage here, basically what we did is we said, well, we had 80 and 20, that's 100. So this 80 is 80% of the total, and this 20 is 20% of the total. So we go to the next year, the May of 2015, we had 45 comments that were working well, 76 comments that needed to be improved, Add those together, 37% of them were working well, 63% of them needed to be improved. So then when you move on to May of 2016, you can see that we had 56% of the comments that felt like things were working well. Moved to May of 2017, 81%. We get to this last column here, and basically what we did is we did a difference between 2015, May of 2015, and May of 2017. This was kind of our trial run, so we didn't really use it as a baseline. We really got to this May time period, so we have May to May to May when we go to 15 to 16 to 17. So if I subtract the 81% minus the 37%, that gives me the 44%. So right now I'm just kind of going through the details of the calculations, and I'm going to kind of make just some comments. I won't go through each one of them in this much detail. So the 44% we had, this concentration here is really on what needed or what was working well. So 44% increase in what was working well for this first category, 13% increase for the second category, and 19% increase for the third category. So that was technology and district administration and leadership. So what I did is we highlighted some of the ones that I think were in the double digits, I think is what we did. So you can see the 44%, the 19%, sorry, the 13% and the 19%. But then we also had a decrease in an area there. You can see that's marked in yellow. Had a 12% decrease with respect to availability of and accessibility of professional development. So you can see in May of 2015, we were at 66% working well. And then in May of 2017, we were at 54%, which gives us a decrease of negative 12%. A couple more comments just on the structure is that you'll see I have some notes on a few of the sample sizes there in May of 2017. It was really kind of the area I concentrated on. So I'm going to do an example here. In number 2, technology had 172 that were comments about things that were working well, and 70 that were things that needed to be improved. So the ones that were over 100, so this is 172, the ones that were over 172 I marked, kind of call those maybe power comments. Again, going back to sample size, if I have 1 or 2 comments about something that may not present much as much of a power standard or a power comment as if I have 172 comments on it. So I think we marked the ones that were over 100, and then I do have some markings there on the ones that were like less than 10, because you start getting down to 10, it's 9 or 10 people or 9 or 10 comments. Maybe not as many people are as concerned about that particular area. So I'm going to stop right there on that slide, give you a minute to just scan through it, and then I'll flip through the next couple of slides and make a few more comments.
Dr. Barlow, maybe I,
Sure.
sorry.
Questions?
I just wanted to ask one question. This is stratified across the entire district. Do you also have this drilled down on each individual campus, disaggregated, to see what those trend lines look like at each campus, to see if there's different tones and attitudes at each school?
We don't have that level of sophistication yet. As Dr. Cavazos mentioned earlier, as we go into kind of phase 2, we do anticipate having a little bit better sophistication with respect to be able to maybe identify campuses or different groups and look for a little bit deeper analysis there.
Okay.
And that's really important because remember, this is the big picture now. This is the employee engagement survey, so these are employees, not necessarily all teachers. They could be from any department. And so in order to make sense of the comments, it's important to structure them this way. As we move to identifiers, then we should be able to answer questions about, are these like new teachers or teachers that have worked for us for a number of years? Are they high school teachers or elementary teachers or auxiliary employees? That's phase 2 of our entire survey kind of transformation. But it was important because we get so many comments that people wonder, because at campuses and other places that I speak to individuals and staff, they ask, does anybody read the comments? And yes, we do. And the campuses and the departments, they have their own comments. And sometimes it's 2 pages, which is, in relation to 500, is not much. And sometimes there are many pages. But the first step is to try to organize and make sense of the categories and then the volume, which is really important, why he highlighted some over 100 versus some that are just 3 or 4 comments in that category. So it's a complicated task to do qualitative analysis over so many comments and different variations, but it's getting tighter.
It's phenomenal. I applaud the work of putting the science to such a subjective area to make more of an objective view. Mr. Hogg, you had a
Yeah,
question?
thank you, Dr. Reich, and I agree. It's a great way to evaluate the comments. Dr. Barlow, let me ask on these as we go into future years. You know, if you look at some of these categories, you always try and look at trend lines. Some would go up, down, up on those. On the difference, what's the 15 to 17 versus comparing 16 to 17? Does that make sense? Like a couple of those, they would be an up, down, up, but then we're showing only the difference from 15 to 17, not what occurred from 16 to 17.
Are you asking just about the trend line from for all 3 data points?
I am, yeah. And
we just did.
And I guess as they expand out, so then in 18, are we going to compare 15 to 18? Or are we going to compare 17 to 18? Does that make sense? Like, I'm trying to track where my trend line's going, and if you look at these 4, 2 are trending up, and 2 are kind of up and down on each one.
Sure, that's a great observation because we always have that, some variation in those trend lines, and so this is just the way that we had decided to analyze it. Certainly, if there's a more meaningful way that is requested or that we feel like would be more meaningful, we can do maybe a trend line that goes with it instead of having so many data points or so many numbers on the document or on the slide. So absolutely,
I think it's fair for this year because we are at 15 to 17, but future years, what's that breakdown to show that differential?
And so, just not to overcomplicate things, but this entire survey process is being transformed with stakeholder input. So there likely will be a new baseline because we've used this survey now, 4 or 5 years, this survey instrument. Now, some of the questions may be the same, but it's completely being transformed now into different categories and things like that I think is going to be really important. As we have identifiers, we'll have a new baseline. So I think that's a very important point that we probably won't be asking. And even when we ask open-ended, it'll be much more about basically, do you want a response? In other words, is this a question you want answered? And we're going to have different ways of communicating with the people who are putting comments, because what we found over the years is I wrote a comment, and well, number one, it's all anonymous, so who do you get back to? And so we were going to build in opportunities to actually ask them if they would like to contact someone or if they would like communication from someone else, and then maybe they don't. Maybe they just want to just leave the comment. But we think that's an important piece that is missing, just as we've gotten experience with this survey. That's one component, but the whole, I think, instrument will be a new baseline. That's a big point.
That's good. And from Dr. Reich's question, it's anonymous. If people ever feel it's not anonymous, that can really hurt your surveys because they stop doing them, things like that. So does the campus then get those comments anonymously?
Yes.
Do they get a list? So campus, I would hope that campus principal is
and Michelle
reviewing
has
their
a
comments.
whole section that's coming up here in a minute on what we do with them when they get to the campus level, what the area superintendent does with them, and things like that. Which I know are important questions.
Yeah, they're critical for the leadership of each
coming.
location. I'll be quiet then.
No.
For the second time I've jumped to the campus.
So absolutely. I mean, so we take those 500 pages and they're listed by campus, and then we divide those up and we send those out to the appropriate areas and the principals. Absolutely.
Hey, before you continue, and I apologize, I kind of caused the disruption and interruption of your presentation. So we're going to continue that interruption. Just one more question from Trustee Ms. Hudson.
Thank you, President Reich. I find this just so fascinating. I really appreciate that you sort of gave us all of the data. And it's interesting because you can kind of slice it and dice it in a lot of different ways to glean different information. Obviously, something that catches my attention is the subjects that inspire a lot of comments, right, as opposed to the ones where you get maybe just a handful.
Yes.
I'm assuming that that's also quite informative for you guys, especially the ones, I'm looking at communication, for example. Year over year, that inspires a lot of comments from people, whether it be positive or negative. It's clearly
Yes.
something that everyone is very concerned about, right? Can you filter this through our strategic plan for me and tell us exactly how this information informs your work and informs how we serve our teachers, please?
I think that,
that
well,
too
so,
much?
as we went through the strategic plan process, we talked about outcomes and we talked about experiences. And I think this plays very strongly into that experience piece. And as we continue to build models through our department and through the district, we want to have more sophisticated models where we look at not just the outcomes that students are having, but the experiences that our students, parents, teachers, et cetera, are having, and then how those affect outcomes in other parts of the organization. So that would be how I would see this fitting into the strategic plan.
I would also add that, I mean, this all informs some of those performance objectives that are already stated in the different categories within the strategic plan. So to me, it's it's almost a linear
Yes.
dump right into it.
And I would just add, I'm sure Dr. Barlow will mention this at some point, but just to keep in perspective, every time there's qualitative analysis, and there's obviously, it's very rich and it has a lot of the why. But it's also important to note that over 5,000 people answered the survey when we did the quantitative just a minute ago. And then you see the number of actual comments is really, really low in terms of the numbers. Even the ones that are 150 or 200, there were 5,000 that answered. So many people don't put comments. And so that's another thing, just to be balanced on the meaning of these survey results. This is a very important, critical part, but the 5,000 that did a quantitative is very powerful as well. And just to balance it, because this gets real, and qualitative does, it gets more interesting because there's a voice there, right? But in relation to the 5,000 that answered, you're seeing that, only several hundred actually wrote a comment on a category.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Is there any overlap in how you categorize these comments? So for instance, when you read someone's comment, if they've gone into great detail, it could be about school administration and leadership, but it could also be about communication.
Sure.
How do you guys deal with that?
So that's a great question. So let me go a little bit deeper into the qualitative process. Is that categorizing? So if you had, say, 5 qualitative researchers and they went through this process, they may come up with a little bit different slant on how they actually, the classifications and the codes that they came up with. You should see some similar trends and some similar commonalities, but it's probably going to be, it's not going to be exact just because of the subjectivity there. So yes, some comments might be very long and might have, a lot of different pieces in it. What we try to do is we try to take what the bulk of that comment was and get that into one category. What we were concerned about was, as you indicated, the overlap. So, I'm taking a comment and I'm putting it into 5 different categories. Would there be anything wrong with that? Probably not. It's just the way we chose to analyze the data. But we try to pick the one that seemed like it fit the most, the bulk of the comment fit into.
Thank you.
That's a
I
great
appreciate the
question.
clarification.
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay, so the rest of the slides here, I'll go through some comments, but I won't go into as much detail just because I wanted to kind of get the explanation there as far as how the slide was set up. This next one, the only one that I have marked there is instructional and behavioral intervention programs. Again, you can see from May of 2015 to May of 2017, 35% to 34%, then to 22%. So a little bit of a loss there, negative 13%. On the next slide there, categories 13 through 18, number 14, teacher-student ratios, 23% in 2015 to 6% to 8%. So that decreased to negative 15%, or by negative 15%. And then bilingual and ESL programs, you can see an increase there of 29% over that same period of time. School specialists, their work and their salary or benefits, you can see an increase there of 10% over that same period of time, from 25% to 35%. On the next slide, 22, academic programs, an increase there of 21%, 64% in May of 2015 to 85% in May of 2017. Also note there that that would be one of our power comments, our categories there. It has over 100 comments, 169 in one column and 31 in the other. And then school non-academic programs, very similarly there, an increase of 21%, and again, over 150 or 175 comments total there. Substitute teaching and programs, number 24, a decrease there of 21%. But I make a note here that this has that one cell there that has only 4 comments in it, and then 45 on the needs to be improved. So there again, your sample size is going down there. And then number 27, reduction of non-instruction teacher activities in order to allow teachers more student instructional time. An increase there of 10% over that same period of time. And then 29, improving the overall nutritional value of cafeteria menu options, a decrease of 10%. In this slide, I won't read through each of these, but you can see that there's increases on each one of the categories there. And some of these, like number 11, or I'm sorry, like number 31, does have really over 200, if you add both of those up, in 2017, over 200 and about 80 or 90 comments there. So a lot of people commenting on school program implementation and effectiveness. So increases on all areas there. Then we get down to a couple of what I think are interesting categories, and I've circled a couple of numbers here. So this the last entry here, and then I think there's an entry on the next slide. You can see that the number 34, most things. So think about the question about, well, what is working well? And people just say most things. And so you can see that went from 0 to 2 to 142 to 33. So you can see that is increasing just as it goes from one time period to the next. I thought that was an interesting observation there. Just most things are doing well. Then we get to kind of the opposite of that on the next slide. So really we want to see this really kind of going down. So we ask the question, what things are working well? And then you get a comment, nothing. Okay, but you see that you have 127 comments in January of 2015, and then that goes down to 79, down to 13, and then down to 37. So I thought that was significant. I mean, you know, people are, respondents are not happy, and you ask them a question, and what's going well? Nothing, and then you see that decrease from 127 down to 37. I thought that was kind of an interesting trend there. And then we had a couple other slides there on just how we went about processing the comments and addressing that with principals and supervisors and departments. And I think Michelle is going to make a comment on that.
Before we get there, Dr. Barlow, just to put this into context, what type of thresholds, what type of action thresholds are there where, I mean, overall, there's a low number of comments. Out of 5,000, we get the high end to a couple of hundred, and these last few that you're talking about, we're down in the single digits, double. What are actionable thresholds versus hyper focusing on something that isn't necessarily significant or really achieving towards our strategic plan or student outcome goals?
Are you asking like the number of comments then has some meaning to it and to take action on it?
Yeah.
I don't know that we've actually come up with a standard there. What we talked about with respect as we went through the data and the markings that I made on the slides, where we were looking at maybe 100. Mm-hmm. That if you had 100 comments, we kind of call that a power category. I don't really have any science behind that, but that was kind of the break point that we made there.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Okay, President Reich, Dr. Cavazos, members of the board. The first thing that we did was read all of the comments for our assigned schools. So for the 22 secondary campuses, I had almost 200 pages of comments. And so I had some schools that had only 1 or 2 pages, and then I had 5 schools that had over 15 pages of comments, between 15 and 20. And those are the schools that have the largest number of employees, so it makes sense. But that's the first thing that we did. And we highlighted things that jumped out at us, anything that that we thought might was something that was a violation of policy or might need to be investigated. We highlighted those. Some of the things that were mentioned in the comments had already been investigated, and so we had knowledge of those situations. The next thing that happened was that we met with the principals individually to process the comments. We discussed with them how they use comment feedback, and all of the principals read the comments. It's kind of grueling at times because the comments sometimes are inaccurate, sometimes they're incomplete, sometimes the comments are very negative, but the principals do read the comments. They read what's working well, what can be improved, and then the recognition. We asked them to look for patterns and trends for both positive and negative comments. So from a high level, what are things that you see repeated over and over again in the positive comments and in the negative comments? What are the outliers? What do you see only one time? And we asked them to process. And because we had already read them ourselves, we could lead that discussion with a principal who might have gotten stuck and not able to see a pattern or a trend. And then we talked about what might be some leader actions that you would take in response to the comments. So if it was a question, if a comment on a principal's survey came up over and over again around communication, what are things that you can do to address concerns about communication? Because it's coming up repeatedly. And one of the most important things that we did was we asked principals to assure employees that the comments are read, not just by the principal, but by the area superintendents and by Dr. Cavazos and by Dr. Barlow's team. Because embedded in some of the comments are comments made by employees that something to the extent of, if anybody is reading this, and I don't think anyone is, please do something about this. And so we asked the principals to please emphasize to employees that we do read the comments, we do value that qualitative feedback. And they could do that when they rolled out the results or when they rolled out the action plan. But we did ask them to do that. And then we asked them to factor in the comments when they were deliberating as a leader or with their leadership team about actions that they could take overall to improve their campus culture.
Just a couple of things to add, and they also deal with that balance that we're dealing with tonight too, where, like Michelle said, a campus may get a page of comments, but they're quantitative, a lot of participation, but just not a lot of comments. And so you have to have that balance of the bulk of the quantitative work is done, and then you have a few comments, and so how do you balance what the meaning behind all that? And they do a good job at helping them with that.
Correct. Okay. Do you have any questions for me?
Yes, there are. Ms. Mays?
Thank you, President Rush. So, Michelle, I heard you saying for bringing the information to the principals, the leaders on the campus, it sounded like there was a lot of accountability for them to, you said that you have them read the comments and for the good, the bad, make their assessment. So if they're receiving comments that they're not identifying with, and I'm sure that happens a lot, where they're not seeing that the comments that are being made, we'll use communication as the example because that's what you used. They don't see where they're having an issue in communicating, they never saw that. Is that where you would step in and help guide them?
Absolutely.
Okay.
There are also indicators in the summary, in the qualitative part that deal with communication. For example, the indicator that says, my principal supervisor consults me in decisions that impact my job. That's a communication indicator. And so a lot of times that will be low, and then there will also be comments, and so there's a correlation between the qualitative comments and then the quantitative part of the survey. And then we also work with them as supervisors in things that we've worked with them on in these areas also.
That's good. That sounds fair.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Mays. Ms. Hudson.
Thank you, President Reich. I was really very glad to hear you saying that you're encouraging the principals to let people know that these comments are read and that they're being taken in and responded to. You know, to go back to our strategic plan, our beliefs are our success depends on a commitment to all, to a clear and focused vision, a positive culture, and an engaged community. I'm summarizing. But I think the main thing that I would like people to take away from this whole presentation, aside from just being very encouraged that in general we're trending in all the right directions, is that this is not just a top-down approach to fulfilling that strategic plan. It's a circle, and we're actively engaging students and administrators and teachers and parents and everybody to ask, what is it that we can do better to fully engage you and to serve you more? I think that sort of circle of communication is really vital and super important. And you can slice and dice all the data, and I find that really exciting. But for the people who aren't data geeks, to at least know that there are a lot of ears who are listening, who are seeking out voices to be heard and to be considered at the highest levels of our administration and leadership, I think is so important. And I really appreciate the work that you guys do to make their feedback so relevant. Thank you.
Thank you. Any others?
No, I would just say thank you for the information, the follow-through, the continuous feedback loop. It's really impressive to think that just over 5 years ago, we did not inquire, we did not ask, we didn't capture opinions, thoughts in this type of data. To go from then to the baseline to now and see a continual upward trend really speaks volumes. It's so encouraging to see our forward momentum. In relation to Ms. Hudson's comments on, for those that aren't data geeks, do we currently put this information in a user-friendly, summarized version on our website, communicated out to parents, anything like that? Or is that thoughts that you've considered moving forward? Just, not we went from 3.5 to 3.6 or anything like that, just, trend-wise, here's, things are great. Maybe after the survey comes, the results come back, just as kind of like an update, so that different stakeholders can see in general terms that things are really looking good.
So in general, we post all of this on our website, including the presentations, all the survey results by campus, etc. We don't post the comments because some specific names and all that, but we post the qualitative. In those slides, there's some summary. I think maybe a good next level to that is a fact sheet that says, here's the summary for everything on one page, basically.
Yeah.
And so we can do that. But we do post all of this once we present it to the board
Great.
on the website.
Great. Very good. I don't see any other lights indicating more questions. It is late. Thank you for going through this level of detail for us.
You're welcome. If I could just leave you with this thought,
Yeah.
what I work with my principals on is to consider the process of reviewing the comments a little like mining for gold. You're reading the comments. Maybe at first you don't see the kernel of truth in there, the nugget of gold, but somewhere in there, there's something you can use as a leader to get better. And so that's how how I work with my principals to use the comments.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate both of you. All right. Now we come to our open forum for non-agenda items. I don't have any cards here. No. Okay, there are no cards, so we will move on to the superintendent's report.
No report.
No report. Moving on, school board reports. Any trustees have a report? Ms. Mays.
Thank you. I just wanted to have an opportunity to say this. For our back-to-school event, I humbly have an opportunity to serve on the board for the Dental Health of Arlington, and they were there, and they gave their report, that there were over 300 students that they were able to see. We had over 5 dentists that volunteered their time to come and to see our students. And comparative to last year and this year, the number of students that actually showed up with what they would rank like a number 1 or 3 is where they're actually showing up with abscess and pain at that very moment, to the students where they really had to go in and just do some maintenance, decreased. And I believe the reason why they did, and the dentists that were visiting actually commented on how many sealants they were seeing on so many students' teeth. Well, I really think that is because of the SMILES program that is done by Arlington Dental Health, coming into over 20 of our elementary schools, providing maintenance service to our students to put sealants on their teeth, clean their teeth, teach them how to keep their teeth clean. I believe strongly had an impact. So I just wanted to, first of all, give a shout out to Arlington Dental Health and really enjoy the partnership that AISD is having to help improve teeth maintenance for our students. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mrs. Mays. I really appreciate that. And on that note, the back-to-school fair was phenomenal. Having the opportunity to go and walk around to every booth, which is what I did. It's phenomenal to see the number of children and families impacted by the collaborative and collective efforts of so many organizations in the community and different groups within our district. There's so many positive stories that the kids are so excited to come to school because they got their hair cut that day, as an example. It is really remarkable. It's really moving. So thank you to the Parent and Community Engagement Department, Aaron Perales and Leslie Johnston, and a huge team of volunteers, bigger than I've ever seen in the past 3 years of doing it at the stadium. And it was very nice to be able to experience that, witness all that, and thank you to Ms. Walton and Ms. Hudson as well, being out there and checking out all the kiddos and the organizations. So I don't see any other lights. First off, Madam Secretary, do we have any items to consider?
No, President Reich.
Okay. And so at this point, the Board of Trustees will now go into closed meeting under the Texas Government Code, sections 551.071 and 551.074, to continue discussing discussion action item B, consideration of filling trustee vacancy. The time is now 11:20 p.m. Thank you. We are back in open meeting at 1:22 a.m. on August 18th, 2017. No action was taken in the closed meeting. So we are continuing on now with our agenda, discussion action item B, consideration of filling a trustee vacancy. I have a light flashing from Mr. Hogg.
Yeah, thank you, President Reich. The board has considered candidates that have indicated interest to fill the trustee vacancy. Due to state election laws, calling a special election in November would be an expensive venture for AISD and would leave possible candidates 12 working days to file for a November election. Moreover, an election would leave us 3 months with a vacant position on the board. Appointing a person to serve as trustee will only fill the vacancy until the next trustee election in May of 2018. Therefore, I move to appoint Justin Chapa to fill the trustee vacancy until the May 2018 election.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Hogg to appoint Justin Chapa to the interim position, a second by Mr. Hibbs. I see some lights, so discussion. Ms. Walton?
Thank you, President Reich. Respectfully to my fellow board members, I will be voting no on this motion because I strongly believe anyone the board chooses to appoint to fill the interim should be someone who is not planning to seek the seat in the May 2018 election. I regret that time makes it not feasible to hold a special election in November.
Thank you, Ms. Walton. Ms. Hudson.
Thank you, President Reich. Arlington ISD is blessed to have many qualified candidates who are both willing and able to serve as interim trustee until the election in May. I am very impressed with the candidate put forth by my colleagues. My vote this evening is not out of unwillingness to work with this highly qualified individual. It is simply a deep expression of my commitment to the democratic process. I am opposed to taking official action that may influence the coming elections in favor or against any of the amazing individuals that have put forth themselves and expressed an interest in serving the students of Arlington. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hudson. I don't see any further lights indicating further discussion. Please vote. We have 4 trustees voting in the affirmative and 2 voting against. The motion carries. At this point, at 1:25 p.m., 1:25 a.m. on August 18th, I declare this meeting adjourned.